Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. Off we go, and welcome with R.A. Timken. I'm James Westling, and this is a very special day for us. It's not just your typical Three Things Thursday or Throwback Thursday. It is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Now seen and heard. You can see us at Big 12 Studios, big12studios.com, the Big 12 Fast channel. You can watch us via your Roku device, Amazon Prime, DirecTV, YouTube, and many other avenues for your viewing pleasure. So we've been on radio for a little over a year now, and we've been talking about this for a long time. We had a week kind of test run to get things rolling. We are live on the Big 12 Studios channel today.
And for you, it wasn't much of a transition because you're already a TV guy, and you always come in every day. Your hair is beautifully coiffed. I mean, you look great every day.
Star of the show, clearly.
For me, clearly. For me, this has been more of a transitional period, you might say. You know, whereas I used to really come in looking schlumpy, now I'm sort of expected to look a little bit nicer, for a little bit more TV friendly, as they like to say. So we'll see how that goes.
Your hair is combed.
Thank you.
Makeup looks great.
Thank you.
By the way, 10 out of 10 there.
I did it last night just to be careful, just to be sure.
But normally we do roll in sloppy T-shirts and gym shorts. That is no longer the case. We're polished, we're clean, we're ready for the show.
Especially because we have the commissioner coming in today.
Brett Yormark's going to join us, the Big 12 commish, around 7:40 this morning here in this first hour, Central Time. And then next hour, you'll hear from Max Olson of ESPN.com on the Big 12 Conference and defensive stuff rate, which the nation's leader is right here in this league. And then in hour number 3, we go in the trenches with our guy, Lige Douzable, who played over a decade in the NFL, was an all-league, although they weren't in the Big 12 at the time, defensive end at UCF, and nobody knows the line of scrimmage better than Lige. So with our Big 12 Today launch here on Big 12 Studios, we have the Big 12 coffee mugs. We keep it light. We keep it fun. Fun meter. How much fun should we have today? We like to have fun on this show.
Yeah, but not too much fun.
We break it down. We deep dive these teams, these matchups, all the star players, but not too much fun.
Right. And, I mean, we don't, I don't need you, like, jumping up and dancing in front of the cameras or anything today. So maybe like a 4? A 4 level of fun?
Out of 10 or out of 5?
I was thinking like out of 6,000.
80%?
You could have as much fun as you could possibly ever want.
I was also thinking, we could kind of rename some segments within the show, like a show within the show.
Okay.
A little morning coffee talk. Here it's very casual.
Oh,
it's very
okay.
light. We have the coffee mugs.
Yeah, like the old Linda Richmond skits.
Yeah.
Like, the Big 12 is neither big nor 12. Discuss. Like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what came to my mind when I was going to bring forward this idea. It's like a dream within a dream. Little Inception style.
Kansas City is neither in Kansas nor Missouri. Discuss.
But it's both. Now I'm confused. All right, so we're off and rolling here on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. He's R.A. Timken. I'm James Westling. You'll see our producer, Taman Turner, from time to time. We've got the commish coming in here in about a little over a half hour. Major injury updates in the Big 12 in regards to not just some starters in the league, but also some star players. And we'll have more on this in about 15 minutes, but the headline is definitely BYU's linebacker, Jack Kelly. We had Kalani Sitake on, the BYU football coach, earlier this week, and he gave kind of a brief update on Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly. But he's listed as doubtful. The first availability report came out yesterday. BYU's got a huge matchup. They're a 1.5-point favorite, according to ESPN Bet, at Arizona. The game is at 8 Eastern, 7 o'clock Central this Saturday on ESPN2. But without Jack Kelly, man, that changes things for BYU's defense and for Arizona and their quarterback, Noah Fafita.
Yeah, and I think doubtful to a degree is actually fairly optimistic, given, how bad the injury looked when it first happened. And so the fact that he's not out this week, I guess, is a good thing. initially my thought was Jack Kelly's not going to play this week. I would be surprised if Glasgow didn't, just based on not any information, but what it looked like happened in the game. At this point, like in the NFL, there's certain trends that certain coaches will have in terms of designations. With the availability report being new in the Big 12 and this, just being a few weeks old for just Big 12 play, we're going to get a better sense of these coaches and how they go with each designation and what the reasoning is behind them and what they might mean. Not all designations are created equal, and so we don't yet have a sense of that. But I think Glasgow being probable, Kelly being doubtful is actually probably more optimistic than I was for both of those guys after the injuries happened. The other one that I paid close attention to is Texas Tech. Jacob Rodriguez, who left the game last week for a period, is listed as questionable, and so too is Howard Sampson, the star left tackle for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They have both Hunter Zambrano and Sampson that have been questionable, but Zambrano's missed time, and even when healthy, he's been bypassed along the offensive line. But Sampson's been a mainstay. He's been one of the best offensive linemen in the country to start this season, and so those are two to monitor as well.
It's interesting with BYU's injury report because, they're kind of the team that we're watching closest going into their game against Arizona. But also, they have the smallest or shortest list, whatever you want to call it, injury report in the Big 12. They only have 3 guys on their entire roster that are out against Arizona. Jack Kelly is doubtful. Isaiah Glasgow is listed as probable. So they have 5 or 6 guys listed as probable, but in terms of players that we know are actually going to be out for these games, they have by far the smallest list in the Big 12 on the availability report. Everybody else is pretty beat up. So far, BYU, outside of these 2 guys, has been able to stay relatively healthy, which I think is speaks a lot about their strength and conditioning program, playing in the altitude, their brand of football. Like, you look at BYU, and they're just such a physically imposing team, and they're healthy.
Yeah. But, these are 2 humongous injuries.
Right.
And, look, for BYU to be at its best, this is a team that's sort of built to win with ground and pound game, with the defense and the ability to, at times, take some shots down the field with off-play action. When I look at this game, I think, the availability of Glasgow is huge, but Kelly as well, especially, given Arizona is a play-action type team. They're a zone read type team. So, sucking the linebackers in, getting linebackers to stay honest, that's a huge part of their attack. The other one that stood out to me is the Arizona State-Utah availability report. And so Utah finally added the probable designation after, or rather, was it questionable or doubt? So the first week we saw Utah in the availability reports, it was just out. That's it. It was just whoever's out. This week they added, I believe, 1 player to the probable list. And then Arizona State went all in. A lot of players, yeah. A defensive tackle for Utah is probable, but, there's a ton of players on the probable list for Arizona State. Jordan Tyson, Shimon Mateer, Clayton Smith, Sam Levitt, Jesus Gomez, Ohigbo, Canyon Floyd. A huge chunk of their production is listed on probable. I can't tell if Kenny Dillingham is just trolling here or what, but that was also noticeable to me that most of the players that are the most impactful players for Arizona State wound up on their availability report this week.
Yeah, I love Jordan Tyson, the tight end, Mateer, Sam Levitt, the quarterback, as you noted, all listed as probable. The kicker is probable. He's probably going to play. Utah coach Kyle Whittingham took a little bit of heat after not including quarterback Devin Dampier going into the Texas Tech game. Now, he's probably 100% by this point in time. At least you would think, based off of the fact that they've had a bye. He didn't take a lot of hits in their win against West Virginia, but he didn't practice all week. And a guy that's not practicing is probably probable or questionable at worst, and he wasn't listed at all. So they've added one probable player, and it's a defensive tackle. Dampier's nowhere to be found.
And again, I mean, we'll get a better sense of how coaches want to manage this as we move through the season. You know, there are some coaches where if a guy doesn't practice all week, they're not going to play in the game. They've got to prove that they can practice throughout the week. In fact, that's what Kalani Sitake told us about Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker. They don't practice, they're not going to play. So, you know, every coach has a different criteria for, you know, how they're going to label certain guys. And, you know, obviously, when you look at Dillingham and Whittingham, man, those hams kill me. To, like, really remind myself each one.
And they both go ham.
They both go ham. But Kenny is very transparent about injuries, and Kyle is not. He's the exact opposite. So it's just funny to see the availability report this week for that game.
Well, the other day, I thought that Taman was showering us with water bottles, but it was just you spitting at me. Arizona State getting ready for Utah. Arizona State, their game environment simulation practice method, this week included Coach Kenny Dillingham spraying footballs with water mid-throw for Sam Levitt in order to prepare for what could be stormy conditions in Utah. Another forward-thinking, outside the box. It looks a little bit wonky when you see the footage of a very locked-in coach spraying these footballs mid-throw for Sam Levitt to try and get ready to throw a wet football against the Utes.
Hopefully this one goes better than their exercise before the Mississippi State game with cowbells, which they did, and then obviously did not handle the Cowboys very well in Starkville. That or they didn't handle the offensive or defensive lines particularly well. I can't remember which one it was.
In the second half, they dominated the Cowbells. Cowbells stood no chance in the second half. First half, the Cowbells won, okay, the first round. Here's what Coach Dillingham said about preparing for the rain that they're expecting in Utah on Saturday.
Yeah, I really don't care about the weather. Like, obviously, we got to prepare for it. We got to spray, footballs down as much as we can. We got to do stuff like that. But at the end of the day, football is won by one person moving the other person the other direction and then not giving the other team the ball, right? At the end of the day, like, weather can affect how you get that accomplished. But you still have to take care of the football and you still have to move the person in front of you the other direction, right? So I think, whether there's rain, whether there's not rain, yeah, we're into it. We can't prepare for it. We live in a desert. We don't get much of it naturally. We have to play some wet ball drills, but we're not focused on that. We're focused on, the task at hand, which is Utah.
Just a little water. I mean, I actually love that clip from Kenny because, he says, I think, what a lot of us are thinking, which is, how much of an impact does this actually have? The thing is, like, practices become very monotonous, especially for the reporters covering it. So when you see something that is outside the monotony, it becomes newsworthy. And, like, this is, going to be the biggest story in Phoenix area sports news this week when it comes to Arizona State because it breaks from the monotony of what is normally going on in practice. But I think, Kenny hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, the rain or not, like, we've got to move the other people. Football is at its core a tug of war. And I tell my kids as they're starting to learn the sport of football, like, I know it's easy to pay attention to the ball, and that's what everybody wants to do, but look at these lines. If you see the offensive line moving forward, that's going to be a successful play. If you see the line moving backwards, it's going to be a failed play. Just look at the line. That will tell you exactly what's going to happen within that play. Sometimes there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, that gives you a pretty good gauge of if that play is going to be successful.
And Coach Dillingham, I wouldn't say he took heat for his unorthodox approach to prepare for Mississippi State, but there were some fans that were kind of questioning, why wouldn't they just try and simulate that environment by using a speaker and just playing really loud music or put the cowbells on a speaker and blare it. They actually had trainers from the Arizona State staff walking around between the players with actual cowbells, ringing them as loud as they possibly could.
But they lost the game.
They lost the
in
game.
Starkville because they couldn't move the guy in front of them.
Or the cowbells.
I don't know that the cowbells
the cowbells
had anything to do with it.
They were very loud.
They're incessant and horribly annoying.
Like, they had more cowbell.
I'm honestly the number one reason I'm happy that I don't cover the SEC is because the cowbells. Could you imagine having to watch games every week with the Cowbells?
I think it's pretty cool. Not gonna lie, I do.
I think it's horribly annoying.
Just real quick, who do you think it favors if there's rain on Saturday in Utah? Does it favor Arizona State or does it favor Utah?
These are two of the best rushing teams in the Big 12. So I think if TCU were playing this game, it would favor the opposition. I think if there was not good running football teams in this game, it would favor the team that's better at throwing. But sometimes you can throw in the rain. It depends. I mean, I would say it favors Utah because it's a home game for them. They win a lot of home games, but they haven't in the Big 12. They've not won a Big 12 home game yet.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty wild for a
And
team that
Arizona-
absolutely dominated at home.
Arizona State's win over Utah last year was kind of a game that put them on the map, and it was around this time last season as well. More on this game to come later on in the week. We'll also preview TCU and K-State later on today, UCF in Cincinnati, Texas Tech in Kansas. We've got the commish. Brett Yormark's going to be here in the house here in about 20 minutes. But coming up next, more injury updates throughout the Big 12, and we'll check the pulse of the Baylor Bears after their win over Kansas State last Saturday here in the Big 12. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio and on Big 12 Studios and Big12Studios.com. He's Ari, I'm James. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league.
Gotta convert it.
Nice.
Scadaboo's the answer.
Big 12 today, heard starting today on Big 12 Studios. Catch us daily on your radio and streaming television via the Big 12 Fast Channel, Big 12 Studios, and Big12Studios.com. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. We've got Taman producing and engineering our program. We'll be joined any minute by the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark, on this launch day of Big 12 today on Big 12 Studios. We missed this yesterday. How this wasn't the lead story today, my bad, I'll never know. What are your thoughts on Texas Tech's new branding? They've got new logos, new primary logo, new secondary logo, new alternate logo.
So it basically is the same double T, just less texture.
Correct.
Would be the best way to describe
You
the
know,
difference here. It's just flat red as opposed to raised up red and black and white.
Yeah, being the graphic design savant that I am, I can tell you that it was beveled in the past. Kind of a raised, three-dimensional
Beveled.
double T.
Got it.
Not leveled, beveled.
Beveled.
And now it's flat. There's a lot of different color combination logos between the red, black, and white. Seems to be, for the most part, I would say, positive reviews from the Texas Tech fan base. It's a little more simplistic, I would say, but it's really a nod to their past. Like, this is essentially a carbon copy of what their logo used to be many, many years ago. It's kind of a throwback vibe to it now. But they're rolling this out officially in every sport for 26-27. But starting, I believe, Texas Tech's next home football game, which would be this weekend against Kansas, I think they're going to have this new logo right there at midfield.
And, I mean, beveled is so early 20s, early 2000s. I mean, this is
The style or the word?
just everything
Yes.
about it. This is so 2025. Whatever's old is new again, and whatever's new is old again. No, I like it. It's great. It's clean. And again, it's very, I mean, feels like everything harkens back to the 90s now. So that's where we're at. Everything is about the 90s. The 90s is so back.
So back.
So back. Thank you.
I'm a big
I
fan
was
of
looking
it.
for that.
Yeah, so back. So back. I think it looks really good. It is a little more simplistic, but again, Texas Tech. I did think the timing of it is a little bit interesting to me. I mean, they roll this thing out early, mid-October, yesterday, officially, right in the middle of football season. I guess maybe trying to get ahead of basketball season and then obviously the spring sports. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. We are off and rolling on a Three Things Thursday. Big 12 injury updates. Jack Kelly, the BYU linebacker, doubtful for this weekend's game for BYU and Arizona. When you look at Houston and Oklahoma State, Connor Wegman, the Houston quarterback, is listed as probable. That's another key injury. He got knocked out of the game that Houston had last time out against Texas Tech. Remember, Zion Chris actually finished the game for the Cougars, but Wegman is expected to be back and be on the field and be the starting quarterback for Houston at Oklahoma State.
Zion Chris Gramillion.
Yes, Gramillion.
Because during the game I wrote down the name Chris Gramillion and was like, wait a minute. That's not. Zion added a hyphen to his last name.
Does it say Chris hyphen Gramillion on the back of the jersey, on the nameplate?
Didn't notice it.
Okay. Or was it just Chris?
I think it said just Chris.
I was going to say, I think you would notice say Chris hyphen Gramillion.
I would think so.
Have to be like a size 4 font
Yeah.
to fit on the nameplate.
I wonder if it was like he's just trying to sneak one by. Like maybe they won't notice that this is the same guy from last year. He played fairly well. Against, I mean, hard to judge. He was thrown into a really tough situation, right? I mean, you're replacing an injured quarterback against one of the best defenses in the country. According to expected points added, the EPA stat, Texas Tech is the number one defense EPA in the country. And they're top 5 both offense and defense, and number 5 in SP+. They're 9th in the AP top 25, but 5 in the SP+, and top 5 in both offensive and defensive metrics.
Haas Haney is listed as out for Oklahoma State, the Oklahoma State quarterback. Remember, they said when he got knocked out of the game against UT Martin, the early preliminary reports were that he could possibly be back by week 5, week 6, which would have been the Arizona game. He did not play. He's listed as out again against Houston. Could be injury related, could also be, remember, Houston or Oklahoma State is now past that 4-game minimum, where if guys want to retain a year of eligibility, they need to play in 4 or less games. Now, Haas Haney could still play in 3 other games this year and still preserve a red shirt, a medical red shirt, because it was injury-induced, but he's listed as out again for Oklahoma State. Josh Ford, their all-league tight end, is listed as out. Their availability report continues to get longer and longer and longer. And then the other note I had is in the Cincinnati UCF game, Dante Corleone is nowhere to be found. He is not out. He is not questionable. He is not probable. He is not doubtful. He's 100%. He's going to play. And running back Evan Pryor is listed as probable for Cincinnati in that game.
Also, on the Oklahoma State side, Josh Ford announced that he was entering the transfer portal. Yesterday we talked with Max Olson about some of the changes to the portal with the one portal window now. And then the other one, which was announced yesterday or 2 days ago, is around the transfer portal and when coaches leave or are fired. And I mean, I get in principle why they're doing it. So basically, moving forward, if your coach leaves, you have to wait until a new coach is hired, and then that's when the portal window will open. I think 5 days after a new coach is hired. Again, I get it in practice. I get it in principle, I should say. In practice, though, it sounds like a really bad idea. I mean, just think about this Oklahoma State situation. I mean, you've got kind of a lame duck team, basically playing through the rest of its season, hoping to get a Big 12 win. Oklahoma State, I would imagine, has some guys that are playing for pride that are trying to avoid losing 18 consecutive Big 12 games, which is ultimately what they're facing if they don't win a Big 12 game this year. But, again, I get in principle why you do this. In practice, though, what a weird dynamic. Oklahoma State players are now allowed to enter the portal at this point in time because it's grandfathered into the old rules. But
right.
I think it does more harm than good because, you get guys that are going to enter the portal. They know what their intentions are going to be and maybe have their mind changed by a new coach. But, in this situation with Oklahoma State this year, you got a bunch of guys that have to hang on to a team that they are not buying into, don't want to be a part of, may not. It's just weird. It's like guys are going to make their own decisions. I get entirely why you want to, not limit the decision making, but give them the full picture of hey, at least wait till a new guy comes in to see if you want to buy into that guy. But you're going to have guys that will just check out immediately. And that will be detrimental to the team overall. Sometimes it's better to cut weight in certain situations than it is to move forward with a team that isn't completely cohesive because guys are thinking about leaving.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of guys, after a coach gets let go, they will announce that they are entering the portal. They will sit out the rest of the year, preserve their red shirt, but also still be part of the team, still practice, still go through the day-to-day, go to meetings to keep their bodies football ready. So it is a really interesting dynamic. And I think that the goal, to your point, is kind of what you noted with, I think the NCAA and schools are hoping that the new guy can come in and have 5 days to try and convince players to stay, that he wants to stay, because coaches typically will come in and want some of their own guys, especially in this portal window where you can turn a roster over quickly. So there are a lot of unique kind of angles when it comes to this.
We've got the commission in the house. We better not keep him waiting.
It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, also via Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast Channel. Commissioner Brett Yormark sits down with us after this. He's Ari, I'm James. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
And here's a throw to the end zone. Jump ball, catch made home.
I did not, no. Big 12 today, heard exclusively on TuneIn, and now you can watch us. Today is the official launch on Big 12 Studios, big12studios.com, the Big 12 Fast Channel. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling, and we are now joined by the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark, here on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios. Good morning.
Nice to see you both. I need to know who does the music mix. That intro was fantastic. Whoever's responsible for it, I love it.
All Taman.
I love it.
All Taman.
Great job.
I mean,
Glad to be here, guys.
perfect song to be bouncing you in, right? Because, I mean, they're not, the rest of the conferences, they're not like us.
They're not. We're a different league.
Well, I tell you what, we are super excited about this setup, number one, here at Big 12 Studios, and just the tune-in, Raycom, Big 12 collab, if you will. What does this mean in terms of kind of just one more layer and one more check of all the goals that you have for the conference when it comes to the whole media landscape?
Well, thank you. Again, guys, great to be with you, and congrats. I like the intimacy of the new set. It's terrific and very much on brand. You know, when we first got here, myself and those that came with me, we wanted to be in the storytelling business. We felt that was critically important. We didn't think that storytelling was being done as profoundly as it should be, specifically in the Big 12. And when I think about storytelling, I mean the human interest stories, the student athletes, Olympic sports. We now have the distribution platforms to do that. And, you know, it's interesting. Our fans are very avid. They want as much content as we can give them, not just on game day, but throughout the week. And you guys are providing that. So thank you very much. And it's a big platform for us. And we're just thrilled to be in partnership with, obviously, TuneIn and Raycom. And it's been a great year, and it's only going to get better.
There's so many other partnerships that have been announced recently. You know, the Barstool Sports partnership, you know, more distribution through TNT and HBO Max and international distribution. There's the announcement of the international games. You know, when you first started, we talked about your whiteboard and how many things were written on the whiteboard. Have you been able to erase? Like, is there more space? It's endless, it feels like. And I'm also curious, like, what is your process from ideation to execution?
Well, great question. First of all, I love our distribution partners. My goal was to get as many people to like us now so they love us when we become a free agent in January of 30. You know, if you think about it from a media landscape perspective, the conference has always gone early. You know, I went early when I took the job in August of 22. 90 days later, we had doubled down with ESPN and Fox for all the right reasons. But we had to do it in many respects. So we haven't been in the marketplace as a true free agent in probably over 20 years. So I look forward to that moment. And what we've been able to do strategically with some of our sub-licensing will only give us an opportunity to entertain the opportunities from more than just ESPN and Fox. We love ESPN and Fox. And if I'm still the commissioner, we're going to continue to double down with those partners. But opening it up to others, I think that's critically important. When you think about just the media landscape for the Big 12, we have some controlled media platforms, which is critically important. We have 5 of the biggest media partners now supporting us and elevating and amplifying who we are and what we do, both our member institutions but also the conference. As I was saying just a couple of minutes ago, Fox last night, during their coverage of the Major League Baseball playoffs, they were promoting our games this weekend. That's great for our conference because we're not just going to a football audience. We're going to a sports audience that's national. So more amplification, more promotion is critically important. You mentioned a little bit about our announcement last week at going to Wembley. In fact, I'll be in London early next week for a press conference at Wembley. Critically important for us. I think we can win globally. And that's important both short-term and long-term. The long-term benefit of winning globally is how do we monetize those international broadcast rights, which currently we are not doing. In fact, no conference does it. So really excited about where we are today. You referenced the whiteboard. There's a lot on it. But, you know, you ask a question about ideation to execution. One of the things that I'm focused on, and so is my executive leadership team, is how do we focus on the things that matter most, the things that are going to move the needle for this conference. And for me, that's how do I create value for my membership. So there's a lot on that whiteboard, but it's prioritized. And for a guy like me that wants to do a lot at the same time, I've had to show a lot of discipline, and I've had to prioritize what truly are the things that are going to create value for this conference. And we just came off a day and a half of a board meeting with our ADs here in Dallas, and that's what we're focused on, the things that can move the needle.
NBC picking up some basketball. They just announced that the games that are airing on Peacock will also be on YouTube TV. That's huge. TNT, fans are loving the TNT broadcasts for college football. Have to be happy about that, yeah?
Love it. Love it. I've always been a fan of TNT, going back to my NBA days rather. Their production, their talent, how they story tell, what they put into it week to week. Our fans, because I'm following social media during the games, love TNT. They love the access we're providing them, the production quality. They're really getting under the hood, when you think about storytelling with student athletes and coaches. They've been a wonderful, wonderful addition to the football season. And then, as you said earlier, they'll transition into basketball, which obviously they do a great job with, having been with the NBA for all those years. So excited about the TNT addition.
Yeah, I'm curious for your thoughts on private equity. Obviously, that's been a huge part of the discussions in college sports. We saw last week, Big Ten made some headlines with some potential news on that front. Can you just add some context for people that are maybe confused about what private equity looks like at the conference level versus maybe the individual school level?
Great question. So I'm going to take a step back. When I got here as commissioner, I realized it was incumbent upon me to explore every and all options to best position our schools and, for that matter, our conference. Looking at capital was one of the things I felt was critically important. And we did an exploration of all the different scenarios that could unfold. Private equity effectively is having someone come in and take a piece of your conference. You're selling a piece of your conference. And with that, think about it as another member. So in the case of the Big 12, if you had 16 schools, you now have a 17th member effectively. So we went down that path. For me and where I sit today, I truly believe that given the uncertainty around collegiate athletics, that having a strategic partner that can help create value, value creation, we discussed it earlier, is very important. And a strategic partner can offer lots of different things. They can offer expertise in different areas of the business. They could be a great sounding board, and they could provide capital when and if our schools need it. So that's kind of how I think about it today. I would never, and I guess I shouldn't say never, but the ideal scenario for us is not just to partner with someone for capital. For me, it's got to be much more strategic than that. Capital can be a part of it, but certainly the strategy, the subject matter expertise is critically important. The other piece is I'm really bullish on the Big 12. I always have been. I love our trajectory. I love where we're going. And, I'm not inclined to give up any of that upside right now. Knowing that, again, we're going to go into the marketplace in January of 30, I think we'll have a big moment. But certainly, as the commissioner, you have to explore every and all options. You never want to be on your heels, and you want to be forward-thinking. And we, as a conference, have done that. And I've done that with our board and our ADs.
We are joined by the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark, here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn and via video at Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast Channel. The Big 12 didn't have a preseason conference poll for football. We are looking at the start that Texas Tech has had and still think they're ranked too low, although in the top 10 of the AP Top 25. We've tossed around the idea of should the AP Top 25 have a preseason poll if they want to have a preseason poll, but then no poll for about a month, similar to what the FCS level does, and then revise the poll and kind of refresh it week 4, week 5, week 6, whatever they want to do. Would that help the Big 12? What are your thoughts on just the AP Top 25?
So we've discussed this internally a lot, and I'm not a huge believer in the preseason polls. Because of roster management and the portal, you just don't know what you have until you play a game.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, to predetermine and just to judge things based on what's on paper, I'm not a big fan of. So starting, you know, those polls a couple of weeks into the season, once you have an understanding of truly what you have, I think has some merit to it. And that's just one person's opinion. When I think of the AP 25, I do believe with you. I think Texas Tech is one of the premier programs in the country. And they should be ranked higher. But they're going to continue to play, and we'll see where that goes. I like how we're represented today. Cincinnati received the most votes of those that were not in the top 25. We'll see where that goes. But I love where the conference is. As you guys know, you cover us every week. We've got 2 undefeated teams. We've got 4 schools that are undefeated in conference play. This is a big weekend for us. The next couple of weekends are big. I think at some point in time, you know, parity is great. And we have a lot of parity. I mean, I was reading a stat, either we're the first or second FBS conference when you think about lead changes in the fourth quarter. It really shows the parity and the excitement. I got a call from someone from the networks over the weekend, said, Brett, your conference leads the drama meter in all of football. And I think that was dead on. But the next couple of weeks, I think, could create some separation as you're looking at who might end up in Arlington. And we'll see how it plays out. But each week is just action-filled, and it's playing out like we had hoped.
Do you think that the Big 12 is fairly represented in terms of the AP Top 25 and in terms of the national public perception of the league and how good it is relative to where it's thought to be?
I'm not sure we're recognized as much as we should be nationally. I think our style of play is incredible. We score a lot of points. We are the conference of quarterbacks. Like I said, we lead the drama meter. When you think about lead changes in the fourth quarter, I do believe that some of our schools should probably be ranked a little bit higher. You know, an undefeated BYU, obviously a Texas Tech. But I also look at schools that are on the fringe that should be getting greater consideration, like a Utah. Cincinnati is off to a great start. I'll be in Cincinnati this weekend when they host UCF. So let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But I think the conference is picking up a lot of momentum. And, you know, as I said and have been saying for quite some time, settlement, in theory, should have created a level playing field.
Yeah.
When you think about the cap. I do feel that's playing out each and every week now. When you think about who started in the top 10 or top 15, some schools aren't even the top 25 anymore. So there is greater parity, I think, across college football, generally speaking. And I think over the course of the next couple of weeks, our conference will emerge and hopefully get the consideration we deserve.
There's some really good teams, once again. Last one before we let you go, basketball media days just around the corner here in a couple of weeks up in Kansas City with the women and the men. Expectations for the Big 12 basketball season when it comes to not just the teams and the member institutions, but you have 5 television partners on the men's side, which will put the Big 12 in some prime windows. What are your expectations there?
Well, first of all, I talked about the preseason polls not meaning much, but I will say that we have 6 schools in the top 25 preseason poll, okay? So I'll use that to my advantage at this point in time. But I think we have schools beyond those 6 that are going to vie for bids into the tournament, you know, the March Madness, and I think we're probably deeper than we've ever been. We were very successful in the portal. We've got a great incoming freshman class. When you look at the talent that's distributed across our schools, we retained some of the, you know, the big faces in the league last year. So I'm really excited about where we're going, you know, as a conference. Last year we had a great run, obviously, in San Antonio. We were almost there in winning a championship. I do expect us to show up in Indianapolis, at least with one school, maybe multiple schools. I think we're that good. So I'm really excited about it. And what's nice is that the country is going to be able to see Big 12 basketball almost every night. You know, you talk about 5 media partners. We've had ESPN, they've been terrific. Fox comes into the fold this year, really excited about that. A lot of broadcast windows there. TNT, obviously they did it at such a high level with the NBA. Now they're in our family for basketball. NBC, and congratulations on your gig, James. That's exciting. And CBS. I mean, CBS is going to be big time for us. They had 6 games, and now there are 26 games between CBS Sports Cable and over the air. So each and every week, our conference will be promoted and marketed like never before, and I'm excited about that. The women's too. I mean, listen, I'm excited about the women's game. I become a huge fan of women's basketball. In some regards, I probably get to more women's games than I do men games. This year, our linear exposure will be terrific. Now, we don't have CBS, TNT, and NBC with the women, just ESPN and Fox, but they do a terrific job. And as you know, the women will have, for the 3rd year running, there'll be a T-Mobile with the men, for our championship week. They kick it off for the first 5 days and lead us into the men's championship. So should be a really exciting basketball season. I look forward to having you guys at Media Days. We're gonna reimagine Media Days a little bit. I felt that historically our Media Day, but others too, it's a little institutional. So you should be excited about it. We've got lots of different new elements that we're going to be introducing, really geared toward the student athlete. We'll have a fashion walk, which will be very, very different because I think, again, back to storytelling, fashion is something that, our student athletes love, both, on the men's and women's side, and we're going to let us know who they are a little bit, from a fashion perspective. There's talk about a little skills challenge that we might introduce. We'll see what that looks like. So trying to reimagine it. We're not going to get it all done this year, but it'll be a big first step in the right direction for us.
It's a busy whiteboard, James. It's a lot going on that whiteboard.
I love it. I love it. And what a way to let the student athlete express themselves. I mean, that is so cool.
That's when I compare where I am today versus where I was, having been, the CEO of the Brooklyn Nets for 16 years, one of the things that is very clear to me is that we're in a purpose-driven industry, and I don't want to lose sight of that, despite rev share and all the things we're doing. At the core, it's the student athlete. And how do we give them the platform to be the best version of themselves? Whether they go on and play at the next level or not. And, you think about the whiteboard, that's our core focus. How do we enable our student athletes to be the best version of themselves? And humanizing them is a big part of that. And we're going to start doing that more and more during those tentpole events, media days, et cetera. So excited about it.
Well, we are incredibly grateful to be here. So thank you for this partnership, the opportunity to promote this league and break down these teams. And we're all in. And again, just thank you so much for your time and for everything you do for this conference.
Thank you both. You guys are at the forefront of telling our story. And we appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership. And as you guys know, I'm always here to help when I can.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
That is the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark, here on Big 12 Today. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, seen via Big 12 Studios, big12studios.com, the Big 12 Fast channel. You can watch us via YouTube, DirecTV, Roku, Amazon Prime, and many, many other avenues. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. We'll be back in a moment. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Here goes. He throws it. It's Manjack. It's a touchdown. Hello. How do you do?
You're listening to
one of the things I've always said about sports is people say that, what matters is what happens between the lines, but I think consumption tells a different story. The storytelling, the narratives, the heels, as much as people complain about WWE and wrestling and, oh, it's fake. I mean, it's the storylines, the contrived storylines, the heels, the heroes. Like, that's why we watch sports. That's why we pay attention. Certainly we love our schools and want to see them win. But more than that, what drives consumption is the interest that people have in certain players. And Shedeur Sanders is a great example of that, right? Like, people wanted to tune in to watch him fail. People wanted to tune in to watch him succeed, right? That's what drives audience. So, Yormark has been consistent in terms of leaning into that. He's done a ton for this conference in terms of partnerships, in terms of visibility. But one of the things he's maintained steadfast is the storytelling piece. Making sure, especially with some of the sports that are undercovered, that we're, front and center with the biggest storylines, highlighting the athletes and what they go through and what they've been through and their context. So that continues to stand out to me. Just more and more platforms diversifying. I think TNT, we've talked a lot about what TNT does well. And, yeah, I mean, they're great storytellers in the sports space. So I just think leaning into that is the right move. And, it's something that Yormark has never shied away from. And he knows the importance of it, as we all do in terms of sports.
And we've got Big 12 basketball media days. The commish told us about some really cool things that are going to be happening there. And that's just kind of the tune-up before the season. The season gets underway. Basketball starts in less than a month. So we've got media days, start of the season, 5 media partners for the Big 12. I've seen as many as 4 teams in the preseason top 10 from this conference on the men's side. We know that TCU and Kansas State and Iowa State and Baylor, maybe even Oklahoma State, will all be well represented when the poll comes out on the women's side. So really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. The Big 12 is most likely going to have the first and second overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft in June. And that's to say nothing of my preseason favorite to win the Big 12, which is the same team that's won the Big 12 the last 2 years. So you've got A.J. DeBance at BYU, you've got Darren Peterson at Kansas, and you've got the best team of the conference in Houston. So that will carry the day all season long. The fact that the Big 12 will have 2 of the presumptive top 2 picks in the upcoming NBA draft, and that those 2 guys aren't even on the best team in the Big 12,
Right.
it's going to be a common narrative throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from an NBA scout the other day and talking about Darren Peterson at Kansas. He said, everybody's freaking out about Kansas and their roster construction. And he said, people have no idea how good Darren Peterson is.
No idea.
Like Derrick Rose, Memphis level good as a freshman for KU. He's going to be phenomenal. All right, football, let's get into some game previews for this weekend. The slate is UCF at Cincinnati. That'll be on FS1 at noon Eastern. Then the TNT game, also at noon Eastern, is Houston at Oklahoma State. The afternoon window on ESPN, Iowa State at Colorado at 3:30 Eastern. Also at 3:30 Eastern over on Fox, TCU and Kansas State. We're going to highlight that game here. Kansas at Texas Tech is at 7:30 Eastern on Fox, 7 o'clock Central, 8 Eastern on ESPN2, BYU and Arizona. Then the late game might be the best of the bunch. Arizona State at Utah, 10:15 Eastern, 9:15 Central Time on ESPN. But TCU and Kansas State, really interesting spot for both teams. K-State is their season over after that loss to Baylor. They're now 2-4. They are a underdog in Manhattan. When's the last time that happened? At Bill Snyder Family Stadium, TCU's favored by 1.5. TCU is 4-1, 1-1 in Big 12 play, trying to get to 5-1. What do you think is the big headline in that matchup?
Well, once again, TCU cannot run the football. This was a major theme for TCU last year, and it continues to be the case. Last week against, a couple of weeks ago against Arizona State, they were held to just 10 rushing yards total in that game. Against Colorado, they had 94 rushing yards on 35 carries, so 2.7 per carry. And that's one of the weaker rush defenses in the Big 12. They only run the ball at 46% of the time, which is 106 nationally per team ranking. So they're not a high-volume rushing team, but they're almost completely ineffective. And when you think about this Kendall Briles offense, it's so much of the running game is about that inside zone. So I think when you start to look at like why, a little bit deeper, like why are they not good at running the football? I think it starts with their inability to protect an inside zone. Their interior linemen are getting pushed off the ball, so immediately, anytime they try to run inside zone, it's getting blown up in the backfield because their interior line is not holding up. The other part is within that mesh point that we talk about all the time in the zone read Kendall Briles offense. What you have is linebackers and safeties, they're not freezing at that mesh point because they don't think Josh Hoover is a legitimate weapon to run the football. Hoover can run. He can move a little bit. He's not a great athlete, but he's also not a bad athlete. The difference is he's really good at throwing the ball. So it's not as if he's not exactly a weapon to run the ball. It's that he's so much better throwing the football. So I think it's multifaceted in terms of why they can't run the ball. They can't run the ball because their inside zone, their interior linemen are not holding up at all, getting blown up. And then when they do try to run in certain situations, and they run that zone read, like Hoover's not really looking to be a threat, which doesn't really freeze linebackers or the defensive ends or safeties. So you're playing them straight up. So the zone read doesn't work as well. So to me, that's a huge part of this season for TCU and for this game. TCU has an explosive pass offense. They're really, really good, but they're going to be playing offense with a hand tied behind their back. They can't figure out how to run the ball more effectively. They don't have to be a great running team, but they can't be the worst running team in the Big 12, which is where they are right now.
From the Kansas State angle, as we look at TCU and K-State, which is this weekend in Manhattan, the big story surrounding K-State continues to be the play that they get from quarterback Avery Johnson. He's throwing the ball better than he ever has. He's had multiple 300-yard games this season. Passed for a new career high against Baylor, albeit in a loss. But
Nice drop stop. Takes off. Nobody's in the middle of the field, Pete.
Come to the right side, center,
down,
right guard, right tackle.
Pressured him.
Great job. Not a guy.
And he made a mistake.
And Chase Brown.
But he's also starting
Who would've
to
thought?
do more with his legs. Dylan Edwards has been, I think, a huge part of kind of opening things up for Avery Johnson. But Kansas State coach Chris Kleiman continues to get asked the question. Avery Johnson, how involved is he going to be in the run game? Here's what he said about his quarterback. And that topic, is Avery Johnson going to be a runner?
I thought Avery played maybe his best game last week against Baylor. He was on point. I thought he threw the ball really well. Once again, take the one play aside where we don't pick up a pressure, and he wishes he had that play back. But I mean, he threw some strikes. He's running it when we need him to run it. But, you know, we're not going to give it to him 15 times a game in design run game. That's why we went to the two quarterback stuff. He's the best quarterback for a reason. We're not going to run him 15 times a game.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think every K-State fan is wondering that, right? Why is that the answer there? I mean, is it protection, right? I mean, that's reading between the lines, right? We want him to be healthy. We need him to be healthy. And, I mean, we had this discussion earlier in the week with Rocco Becht, who's, you know, at a minimum, I don't know, semi-concussed from last week's game. Had, you know, lingering foot issues. So, but yet you don't want to neutralize him. I mean, I remember before Avery Johnson became the full-time starter in the season leading up to, what was it, last year? Mm-hmm. Chris Kleiman's talking about how fast Avery is. He's the fastest runner on our team. Well, I mean, you cannot neutralize his game for fear of injury. And it feels like that's what's happened here. Avery Johnson's not the problem, but he's been the focal point all season long. The bigger problem is they didn't do a good enough job in replacing DJ Giddens. That this Kansas State offense under Chris Kleiman has been at its best when they have an elite runner. Dylan Edwards is not that. He's not. He's more of a scat back. He is not a every down runner. And the reason I know that is because of what we've seen this year. He hasn't been healthy. He's questionable on the availability report this week. We thought he turned a corner 2 weeks ago when he had a huge game. And then last week, what did he do? Kind of laid an egg against a defense that has not been very good against the run. So, to me, I think the bigger issue has been that they didn't do a good enough job from a personnel standpoint in knowing who they needed at running back. Edwards might have been a good change of pace back, but he's not an every down back. And I think that's mostly why the offense is suffering. The defense started to become a lot better. I think when the season started, you look at that Army game especially, it stood out. It was like, man, they are just super bad on defense, not tackling, not good at the point of attack. I think that's improved. To me, so many of the fingers are pointed at Avery, and you look at the numbers, you're like, it's not Avery. You need the pick 6 in the game against Baylor. Obviously, that stands out. But to me, it's this line of thinking from the coaching staff and Chris Kleiman, and it's not a lack of running game. It's counting on a guy, Dylan Edwards, who's just not healthy, and he's probably more of a scat back than he is an every down between the tackles type running back.
Yeah, the Kansas State running back that led the team in carries against Baylor was Joe Jackson. He had 13 attempts for 61 yards. Dylan Edwards had 10 carries, 26 yards.
And we thought he turned a corner the week before when he had over 100 yards rushing. But this is where in football you can only judge, like one game can be a complete anomaly. And right now that looks like the anomaly.
The thing that has me kind of scratching my head is, Chris Kleiman says we are not going to run Avery Johnson on quarterback-designed runs 15 times a game. But he's the fastest guy on the team. And then he goes on to say that's why we incorporated this 2-quarterback system, where they'll actually have Avery Johnson on the field at the same time as Blake Barnett, who's 6'1". He's like 230 pounds. He's kind of a bruiser, underrated speed. But also the coaches say that Barnett is a very capable passer and that's another layer of the K-State offense. So if you have that much confidence in your other quarterback, in your backup quarterback, as a weapon in the option game, also a weapon as a passer, well, like that contradicts that statement. Like, why can't you run Avery Johnson more if he's most effective as a runner? Like, if they didn't have a backup quarterback and they were saying, yeah, we can't afford to have Avery get beat up this season, but the fact that they're playing Barnett tells me that you can afford that. So it's
Avery was a 4-star, yes?
High 4-star.
Why was he a 4-star?
Dual threat ability and 4.3 speed.
So what are we doing? I mean, Avery Johnson's career so far has been marked by what he's not doing.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault. It's the kid gloves the coaching staff has taken with him. And I to a degree, I get the line of thinking, but whether he plays or he doesn't play, what you're doing right now is hampering his ability to be at his best and for K-State to be at their best. So it's like, well, we don't want him to get hurt. Our season's tanked without him. Well, you're 2-4 with them playing this style. It's maddening.
Now,
I can't imagine for K-State fans how maddening it is. Because Johnson's not to blame, but it's the lack of the dual threat that is to blame. It's inexplicable that Kansas State cannot have a running game right now. Inexplicable. That's as long as, go back to the Bill Snyder era too. Like, this is a ground and pound program culturally.
They ran Skylar Thompson under Chris Kleiman. They ran Will Howard.
Colin Klein.
Go
back. This isn't just Kleiman. This is historically what K-State has been.
You're exactly right. And when Chris Kleiman got the job, that didn't change. Bill Snyder was very much the quarterback's going to be involved in the run game for Kansas State. And Avery Johnson, again, his passing has been really good. Like, he had one bad throw against Baylor, and it was a pick 6. It was a boneheaded play. In a game in which Kansas State had 70-some plays from the line of scrimmage, he had one boneheaded play, and it was a really bad play. Like, there's no way to sugarcoat that. But he threw for almost 350 yards. And if Jace Brown's helmet doesn't come off, he throws for potentially a game-winning touchdown. So the passing has been better, I think, than even the preseason expectations were that part of his game. But still grabbing all the headlines is K-State's lack of ability to get him sprung loose in the ground game. And that's going to be a huge key, not just because that's the K-State MO, that's the way, that's what Avery Johnson does, but also because TCU's one Achilles heel. Their defense has struggled to get off the field. They're not great on third downs. They're like 116th in opponent third down conversion rate. The red zone defense hasn't been very good. That tells me that those money downs, those 3rd and 2s, those 3rd and 3s, teams are picking up first downs on the ground, which is what Kansas State will need to do. It's what they have traditionally looked to do against teams. So it's just a really interesting matchup. Again, kind of like K-State Baylor, because TCU lives by explosive plays offensively. They've got really fast guys at the skill positions, so they'll have a speed advantage there. K-State's strategy will be ground and pound, keep TCU in that explosive offense, and quarterback Josh Hoover completely off the field.
Yeah, and, while TCU is most likely not going to have a ground and pound type offense under Kendall Briles, the running game needs to be more effective. To me, whoever's running game wins this one will be the winner of this game. These are two teams that have struggled to run the football, and, TCU's offense is basically unstoppable when they run the ball.
Before we go to break, let's hear what TCU quarterback Josh Hoover said about TCU.
We're not going to panic. We know we've got good players. We know we can make plays. And we know if we do that, we're going to give ourselves a chance to make plays down the stretch and win the game. So we don't ever panic. We just keep playing hard, doing our job. That's all we do.
TCU took down Colorado 35-21 through a late game touchdown to cover the spread against the Buffs. It's TCU and Kansas State this Saturday in Manhattan. It's the afternoon game in the Big 12. It starts at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central Time on Fox. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Around the corner, we sit down with Max Olson from ESPN and ESPN.com. This is Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn, and you're watching us via Big 12 Studios.
Levitt has a man wide open. Xavier Guillory at the 20, at the 10, at the 5. Touchdown, Devils! Oh, my!
Always fun to catch up with one of my favorite writers in college football. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepke. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today on TuneIn, and starting tomorrow, streaming on Big 12 Studios. We're joined by Max Olson from ESPN.com. What's up, Max? How are you?
Hey, Ari. Good to see you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate your time as always. College football defensive stop rate ahead of Week 7. Texas Tech has the number 1 stop rate in college football. Number 1, just sort of explain to people that are unfamiliar what defensive stop rate is. And number 2, my takeaway from last week's game and really the whole season on Texas Tech is we kind of have to recalibrate. Like when you watch Texas Tech, you're just not used to seeing their defense play like this. Like it's like the jerseys, like it just doesn't compute in our minds. We can't comprehend that their defense would be this good.
Yeah, so I appreciate bringing it up. So stop rate is a thing I've been tracking for a long time now. Basically, it's very basic defensive metric for efficiency. It's the percentage of a team's drives that end with a punt, turnover, or turnover on downs. And this is not S&P Plus. This is not like a FPI. All these very like high level defensive metrics. It's just very basic. Like does a defense get stops? Do they get off the field? Do they prevent points? And been tracking this over many years now. And I gotta tell you, Ari, never thought I'd see the day that Texas Tech was number 1. I was looking this up just out of curiosity. So back in, we all remember, but like back in the heyday of Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, they had the worst defense in the country when he was a junior, right? And they got stops on 46% of their drives that season. They probably should have just done more onside kicks, if we're being honest. It was that bad. This season, stop rate of 85%, best in the country right now. And and look, back then you couldn't just, wave a magic wand and sign all these transfers and then all of a sudden we're the best in the country. And it has taken many years under Joe McGuire to build up to this. It's not just all these new guys they brought in. I think they've got good depth. They've got good returning players. I think Jacob Rodriguez is playing like an All-American so far this season. But certainly the investments they made on defense back in December when these guys were coming in, I talked to Cody Campbell and these guys, and they're like, we want to build the best D-line in the country. I think you're seeing it. I think like Miami's probably the best D-line in the country, right? But certainly for the Big 12, Texas Tech has put something together that we haven't seen in a long time, not since probably peak Oklahoma or peak Texas. And it's really impressive, and it's been an elite at all 3 levels. And I think Texas Tech is. They're really, really good. They're really good. And the offense is playing, I think, at a top 5, top 10 level. So when you combine that, really hard to stop.
Yeah, just for context, Eastern Michigan is 128th in the country right now at stop rate at 46.3%. So the number you said associated with the Patrick Mahomes Texas Tech Red Raiders would put it basically, at the bottom of the FBS. Air Force is currently 136th at 31.7%. So maybe Air Force should onside kick more. That's insane.
It's Air Force, so you're playing fewer drives. So the more, because of their style play and chewing the clock and all that. But yeah, it's pretty bad over there. And Oklahoma State, I believe, is still last in the Big 12 right now. 48%. So pretty rough for the Pokes right now.
Flip a coin. Are they giving up points or are they getting off the field? Not great. What I think is really interesting, Max, is the blue chip ratio. And I in the back of my mind all year, it's been like, can Texas Tech really win this way? And what is, can they win a title? Can they win a playoff game? Right? Like what's the end goal here that I guess makes this a success? But could this possibly be like the one exception to the blue chip ratio here with the way that they built to the portal in one season?
It's a great question. And I think that, and this is not a knock on Bud Elliott or the blue chip ratio at all, because, I think that clearly you got, decades of evidence that it matters, right? But that, blue chip ratio was not built for transfers. It was not built because it's hard to factor that in, right? I think you've got 24/7 and On 3 and other folks put grades on transfers, but it's kind of a guessing game in terms of figuring out how to do that effectively. And so, yes, Texas Tech in terms of high school recruits, Micah Hudson was a 5-star, but they don't have a lot of blue chip guys on that roster. But David Bailey coming in from Stanford via the portal, that's a 5-star player. That's a potential first-round draft pick a year from now, right? Like it's, those kinds of players. Like I think they added a lot of 4-star talent via the portal this offseason, but that's not really going to show up in terms of blue chip ratio. But you're right. I think that, we've seen some outlier programs here in the last few years. I don't think a couple of years ago, obviously TCU did not clear 50%, right? I don't think Washington did either when they played for the national championship that year. And that was similar, like brought back your seniors, ton of NFL guys, but they weren't all, 4-star, 5-star guys. I think that's kind of the path in the Big 12 is like, you got to build that veteran team that has a lot of return experience, that adds the right pieces in the portal, that has a senior quarterback. And, then hopefully, it's a longer playoff run now too. So like, yes, Washington and TCU were able to do it, but you only had to win one playoff game to get to the championship. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think people will treat this as very much an outlier. But as you've seen, Ari, week to week, when you watch Texas Tech games, I think we're also you're seeing the broadcasters struggling with, they don't know how to talk about the money part.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And look, I mean, ultimately, again, like, do they need to win a title? Do they need, winning a Big 12 championship or getting to a playoff, winning a playoff game like that? That's a huge attainable goal for the Big 12 this year. But moving forward, like Tech, they've invested properly in. I mean, the way you built this was more of a short-term band-aid solution. Long-term, they're committed to building through recruiting, and they're landing 4 and 5 stars right now. And so is BYU, which is really the biggest thing for this conference in terms of their growth.
100%. And look, people are going to roll their eyes and just say, well, that's just because of NIL. But, I do think Texas Tech is like in the process of changing the way people are looking at their program right now. And, I think that I talked to some of these guys like Terrence Carter and Reggie Virgil when they committed to Texas Tech in December. And, everyone just sort of assumes, well, hey, they just, Texas Tech just offered double or triple what somebody else would have offered. Those guys, when they go down to Lubbock, and of course they've never heard of Lubbock, they've never been to Lubbock, they have no concept, right? But when they get down there and they see the facilities and how much money has been put into the infrastructure there at Texas Tech, they're like, whoa, like this place is unbelievable. It doesn't even compare to the place I was at before. And those things help get you to the NFL. Like
Right.
If you have that infrastructure right, and those guys have one more year left and they're in the portal, like they are looking to go pro, and they are looking for what's the place that's going to give me a chance to be productive and physically continue to develop into like the best version you could be. And so I think that was a big sell for a lot of these guys that went to Texas Tech. And yes, a lot of them got paid a lot of money, and a few of them got paid over $1 million for sure. But I do think part of it is like, you have to change the perception, and I think in the Kingsbury era, the Matt Wells era, like, blue chip recruits were not taking Texas Tech very seriously. It's just really, really hard to even get a Baron Morton to come there. Right. And so I think you have to have these kinds of seasons that create a momentum and change of perception that, like, man, if I go there, like, they're competitive, like they could be at the top of that conference.
Max Olson from ESPN is joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Max, you've paid a lot of attention to the transfer portal, and you've done a really good job of documenting some of these numbers. And you tweeted about that yesterday. More than 4,900 FBS players and 3,200 FCS players entered the portal in 24-25. You said schools have money to retain talent now, but the total number of transfers still increase every year. Going to be fascinating if 8,000 football players become available over a 15-day period. And that is the latest update to the transfer portal, which is the window after a player leaves is now 15 days. So I'm wondering if you could speak to kind of all those things, full context on what you've uncovered over doing this and having this data and research over the last, 4 or 5 years, and then the newest updates to the portal.
Yeah, so it changes every year, but this offseason, the portal is going to start on January 2nd, and it's going to be a 15-day window through the 16th. And I think the coaches really wanted to push this back and get it out of December, because obviously we're seeing a lot of you're seeing they're having to recruit next year's roster throughout December while also dealing with coaching changes and bowl practices and bowl games and playoff games and high school signing day and all these things. And so, the FBS head coaches really pushed for this. They wanted to move the portal to January, and most importantly, they wanted it to only be one transfer portal window and no more spring transfer portal. And so that's what they've accomplished. They killed the spring transfer window. It's going to all take place in January now. But will that mean fewer players enter the portal? I don't really think so. I think the because of rev share, people will be able to retain their talent if they want to a little bit more, and maybe we won't see as many high end players go in the portal in January. But it's going to be really interesting when, in the past, grad transfers could enter the portal early. They can't now. They have to wait till January. And so I think you're going to just see a lot of tampering and a lot of conversations, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes at the end of November and throughout December before these guys officially enter the portal in January. How much this really fixes things, I don't know. But we've got one portal window. It's going to be January. It's going to be chaos. The other big change yesterday, and this is one that I've talked to people, a lot of people didn't really kind of see this coming. And you tell me if you think it's a good solution. When you have Arkansas and Oklahoma State and UCLA, these jobs open up in the middle of the season, Virginia Tech, when they open up in the middle of the season, that right now is opening up a 30-day window for guys to enter the transfer portal and just leave their team in the middle of the season and start exploring where they want to go. And to stop that, the new change is going to be that when a coaching change happens, the players on that team cannot enter the transfer portal until after the next head coach is hired. So after Oklahoma State, now Oklahoma State's grandfathered in. So I'll use a different example. But let's say Florida opened up, right? This is a great advantage for Florida now. So let's say Florida fired Billy Napier in a couple of weeks. Florida players can't hit the portal until 5 days after Florida hires their next coach. So the roster doesn't fall apart during the coaching search. Players have to stay in the program and wait and see who comes in and get a chance to meet with the new guys and kind of feel out like, do I want to be here or not? And so they're postponing all this till after. So that way you don't have situations where, hey, I just took over this job, but 20 players are missing. They're in the portal. I can't even talk to them. I can't even recruit them. And so I think they're trying to do that to hold these rosters together and to hold them together during the season. Because I don't think we like seeing situations where 10 guys just bounce off this Oklahoma State roster in the middle of the season. They can't even really go anywhere. They can't go join a new team, but they're just like, peace, I'm redshirting, I'm done. I think they're trying to prevent that. We'll see if that change if that change gets challenged, but it is a pretty significant change compared to what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, does that include an interim coach? So, you think about the current quarterback of BYU.
But it's got to be the full-time hire.
So, think about Bear Bachmeier. He would not have been permitted to leave Stanford in that situation. He was at Stanford.
Ooh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I think that requires some clarification for sure. Because you're right. We have these situations, and that's why this, honestly, Eric, that's why this rule was created. It was created for these situations. Like when Northwestern fires Pat Fitzgerald or Stanford fires Troy Taylor, where this is way beyond the transfer portal window. So it's like, hey, all right, we're going to give you guys a chance to go because obviously the timing of this coaching change is bad. That's why we're keeping this as opposed to just eliminating this, which I think some people probably would like to see this rule just eliminated.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the places that just go with an interim to coast through the season, those players do still need to be able to go. That's true.
Yeah, and you wonder too. Does this now bring up another lawsuit potentially? Do they argue about player movement?
For sure. Every change comes with
every change.
I talk about these things as like, hey, this is what they passed. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, I never knew I needed a law degree, but in college football in 2025, you need a law degree to cover this sport, man. It's crazy.
There's no doubt.
Max Olson from ESPN.com. Max, you're the best. Appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Max Olson from ESPN.com does a great job. One of my favorite writers in college football. As you want to get here on Big 12 Radio. All right, along with James Westling, I am Ari Temkin. Kalani Sitake, the head football coach at BYU. We'll hear from him. Plus, we've still got to preview Texas Tech and Kansas. It's all on the way here on Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today on TuneIn and streaming on Big 12 Studios.
Special thanks to Max Olson from ESPN and ESPN.com joining us here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn and now live on your screen via Big 12 Studios. You can find us on your Roku device, Amazon Prime TV, DirecTV, YouTube, many, many other avenues. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. The Big 12 has renewed and expanded its relationship with Sprouts Farmers Market. This will make Sprouts the presenting sponsor for various social and digital women's sports content throughout the year. Big fan of Sprouts. What are your top 3 most purchased items at Sprouts?
Probably a better question for my wife.
I knew you were going to say that.
But big-time Sprouts fans, big-time Big 12 fans, so it's a great partnership. I do like the bulk section, I'll say that. Some great trail mixes that I like to indulge at Sprouts. And, I mean, we had the commissioner on. We were talking about the whiteboard. And, I mean, there's just a lot of ideation. There's a lot of execution. There's so many things going on. And it's like, you start to think about some of these things that are happening, and in the background, it's like, well, then he did this, that, and the other. It's like 4 other things happened. It's like, but he's back there talking to the SEC and the Big
Literally.
Ten of the ACC.
He's back there right now.
Meanwhile, there's a Sprouts deal done, and women's lacrosse is expanding, and you get a deal with Allstate. I mean, it's just it just goes to show you that this is a relentless team working behind the scenes of the Big 12, led by a fearless commissioner who, I mean, this isn't just, we're not just saying this. Like, the proof's in the pudding, right? There's a lot to be excited about. This isn't just drinking the Kool-Aid of rah-rah Big 12 radio. This is like genuine reaction to what the commissioner has done to solidify and fortify this conference moving forward. And he said it too, that this, what they're doing right now is sort of they're putting together all the data points necessary to when the Big 12 goes back to market in 2030. So when we talk on this show about television ratings and some of these other things that you might not think are important, it's super important because this all plays into what the economics of this situation look like for the Big 12 in the next decade.
Pudding, trail mix, Kool-Aid. I'll go dried mangoes.
Okay.
Nature's candy, of course. Peanut butter. Sorry, Taman. Protein packed. Magic Spoon cereal.
Peanut
extra
butter?
Protein in there. Sprouts has the best peanut butter.
Okay.
On the planet.
All right.
Sprouts brand peanut butter.
Okay.
It's like nothing I've ever had before. It's a little bit sweeter, but I look at the ingredients and there's no added sugar. I don't know where it comes from. But it is. Once you have Sprouts peanut butter, Ari, you'll never go back.
Okay.
You'll never go back to another brand.
All right.
Okay. All right, game previews, UCF at Cincinnati. A lot of storylines surrounding this one. Kind of a low-key rivalry game.
If you were to compare both of these teams to items at Sprouts.
Wow. I would say that, well, UCF is a little bit being, beat up. So maybe a bag of trail mix. You stick your hand in there, you never know what you're going to pull out because we don't know who's going to be at quarterback. Taven Jackson is questionable. Ja'Cory Brown is questionable. We were talking about the Cincinnati injuries earlier on the show. Evan Pryor, the running back, is probable. Dante Corleone is not even on the injury report. He's going to play. But for UCF, there are a lot of questions surrounding their football team. And Scott Frost, he addressed some of those injuries to his quarterbacks this season.
It's a unique situation I've never really dealt with as a coach before, having this much change at quarterback. And it's not just the season. It's been kind of all through spring ball and fall camp since we didn't have somebody kind of step up and take it. It's been a revolving door there in practice and now in games. And hopefully we have everybody else up and ready to be around the quarterback, whoever it is Saturday, so they can feel a little more comfortable.
So trail mix, huh? Maybe one of those like weird trail mixes that doesn't have M&Ms in it, and you're kind of like, you reach in, you don't know what you're going to get, and then you reach in, you're like, well, I don't want that.
Are you going to get more pretzel, more, corn nut?
Cincinnati is probably like prime rib then, if we're comparing Sprouts items. Is that what you go, prime rib?
Produce section all the way.
total prime rib, grade A beef. It's an interesting game from a couple of standpoints. Number one, Cincinnati is super good at protecting the quarterback and really good at rushing the quarterback. They're plus 12 in that sack differential, which I think is an important metric. They have 13 sacks accumulated as a team through 5 games, and the 1 sack given up. These are also 2 of the best fourth down percentage teams in the country. UCF is at 71%, and they go a lot. They're 10 of 14. Meanwhile, Cincinnati's at about 88%, 7 of 8. And look, I mean, Cincinnati's offense is no joke. I mean, they are explosive. They're at 8 yards of play. They're ruthlessly efficient in the red zone. They've scored on all 21 of their red zone trips, and they're producing touchdowns at 81% of their red zone trips. They're explosive. They're balanced. They have a very physical running attack. And this is not just a one-game thing. This is what they've been, and certainly through 2 Big 12 games, but certainly what they've looked like throughout the course of the season. This is the best team that nobody in the country is talking about in the Big 12.
And the commissioner, Brett Yormark, brought up Cincinnati. First team out of the AP Top 25. They are a Top 25 caliber team. There's no doubt about it.
And Yormark said he's going to be at this game, which is an old American Athletic Conference rivalry game. These are 2 coming into the Big 12 of the elite American Athletic Conference teams year in and year out, especially at the end of their run in the AAC.
Yeah, this is the 11th straight year that these 2 programs will meet, and the series is tied at 5-5. Brendan Sorsby is absolutely on fire. He is the nation's highest-rated quarterback per Pro Football Focus, and that includes his Week 1 effort against Nebraska, where the numbers were not good. Wasn't on the same page with his receivers. Nebraska has a really good secondary, so that just magnifies how good he's been since that game. He's number 1 in the Big 12 and top 5 nationally in total quarterback rating. Cincinnati's offense is 2nd in the country in yards per play and yards per rush. And again, that is even with the Nebraska game, Week 1, which tells you just how dominant they've been. And then the other little storyline here that I want to touch on is from the UCF side. This is a Miles Montgomery revenge game for the UCF running back. He started his career at Cincinnati, spent 3 seasons, albeit for a different staff, in the Cincinnati program. And he's been really good as of late. Red hot, back-to-back 100-yard games, went for a $119 against K-State, went for 110 against Kansas, and this will be the 2nd time that he faces his former team. But he wasn't the lead back last year. He was barely on the field. So just another little nugget there for this matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the availability of Taven Jackson is huge in this game. I think he's been knocked out of, is it 2 straight games or 2 of their last 3? And though I did like some of what I saw from Fancher this weekend when he replaced Jackson, it feels like for UCF to be at its best in this game, which they're absolutely going to need to be, it's going to be about Taven Jackson and having an explosive run offense. Because that's, like, you can tell if UCF is going to win a game based on how their offense is running the football. The first half against Kansas, they did whatever they want. They completely controlled the game. They could not run the ball in the second half. They struggled against it. The defense for Kansas really did a good job in buckling down and finished that game off very strongly. But the path to winning for Cincinnati is a bit different. UCF, it's pretty cut and dried. If they can't run the ball, then they're not going to win. And they have an explosive rush offense, but I think a lot of that depends on having Taven Jackson at quarterback.
Totally agree. This is a different team when Taven Jackson is on the field versus anybody else, whether it's Ja'Carri Brown, whether it's Cam Fancher. Taven Jackson is their number 1 guy. He is QB1, and there's not a QB1, B, or C, in my opinion. Now, the rushing numbers you touched on, over 200 yards per game, that's all great. But with these other quarterbacks, when UCF gets into 3rd down situations, they haven't been very good. 103rd in the nation on 3rd down. And I think this is a game, because Cincinnati's been so explosive offensively, that UCF's path is to keep up in this game. I think the only way that UCF wins this is if Jackson plays, he's healthy, they can keep him upright, and they can keep up in a shootout type game. Because Cincinnati's defense has shown that even though they're all the numbers are favorable for them, they are allowing a lot of points per game. You know, their last 2 or 3 opponents, their last 2 I know for sure, have scored over 30 points. And then, you know, the rivalry aspect of it. Like, Scott Frost remembers just how intense these rivalries were when he was at UCF the first time. Here's what Coach Frost, the UCF head coach, had to say about all the success that Cincy's had this season and why.
Well, it's a team that's playing really well. I think they have a quarterback that's playing about as well as anybody in the league. They really own their system on both sides of the ball. It's impressive. Really impressive watching the improvement from game 1 to 2 to 3 to who they are now. You know, sometimes when you win a couple of close games like they have lately, you know, you just get that momentum, and that's a powerful thing. But the improvement is obvious, and got a lot of respect for what their kind of season they're put together.
UCF is a really interesting case study because defensively, you know, they're top 15 in the country in passing defense. They're top 3 in the Big 12 in fewest explosive plays allowed through the air. They've only allowed 10 20-yard passes all season long. That's top 3 in the Big 12. So this kind of no-fly zone UCF secondary, it'll be tested against Sorsby, but it's been tested against Avery Johnson at Kansas State, who going into that game was throwing the ball all over the yard, and then Jalen Daniels, the KU quarterback. But they're also an interesting case study because this UCF team, even in their losses, both of their Big 12 losses, they actually outgained the opponent, KU and K-State. So maybe some of that was garbage yardage late in the game, but it's just a really interesting note about how close maybe they are.
Well, and this feels like, with Cincinnati coming off 2 humongous wins, like this feels like an opportunity for them to not slip up, because all of the goodwill and all of the talk around competing towards the top of the conference and how good this offense has looked will all go out the window if you lose this game. You know, Cincinnati, since they've been in the Big 12 up to this year, they've won all of the games they're supposed to win and then lose all of the games they're supposed to lose. Well, they've won 2 straight where you could say that they weren't supposed to win either of those games. Now they can't drop a game that they're supposed to win going into the game.
It's a great point. Cincinnati's favored by 10.5. Their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, has been a walking fireball offensively for them. Clip 16, here's what Brendan Sorsby said about this Cincinnati team being tough and what makes them special.
Yeah, you know, last year we didn't find a way to win too many of those close ones. So it's been good to see our team, you know, especially after the close Nebraska loss, bouncing back in Big 12 play to started out with 2 close wins. It's been good to see. So really fired up by this team. We're a really tough team. We pushed through a lot of adversity, and we fought through a lot of stuff on Saturday and the week prior in Kansas. So, you know, props to this team and everything we're about, and just got to continue to keep it rolling.
And, man, that is a kid, Brendan Sorsby, that you want to root for. Like, he has been through a lot. And remember, Cincinnati, last year's team, got off to a nice start. They were, 5-2 before they lost their last 5 regular season games? But I think this team is different. Last year, you know, the 5-2, they weren't beating, to your point, the quality of opponents that they've already beaten this year. But Sorsby last year, about midway through the year, his stat lines, his decision-making, everything else plummeted. And we thought, is he injured? You know, what's going on with him? Well, come to find out, he was going through a lot off the field. His apartment got broken into. He felt very unsafe. They actually had to move him to a completely different location across town, and there was just a lot surrounding that. He was living in kind of a rough part of Cincinnati. They got him out of there, but just with all of that, and then the close losses on top of it, he struggled with his confidence. And before the Nebraska game, the coaches were telling us that he had been lights out in practice. He goes out against Nebraska and doesn't have the game that they expected him to have. Well, the next week in practice didn't phase him one bit. Like, this is a different Brendan Sorsby in terms of his confidence and just a leader of this football team.
Yeah, and you know, the big talking point coming into the season from media days was not just that, but the fact that they just didn't have the weapons to get open down the field. And over time, Sorsby lost confidence in his receivers and the ability to get open, and he became much more of a running quarterback than a dual threat. And they found this great balance this year, but they more importantly found receivers that were going to help them be more versatile and more multifaceted. But, I mean, in football, when you start feeling good about yourself, that's when things go south. And Cincinnati's done nothing yet. They have started 2-0 in 2 games they probably weren't expected to win, but they've got to continue to do it. And I think it was Sonny Dykes, who, remember, a couple of years ago said that they looked into what the common theme is amongst Big 12 champions. And lo and behold, it's a physical running attack. This is a conference of quarterbacks. The best quarterbacks in the country right now are in the Big 12. I'd argue of the top 5 quarterbacks in college football, 4 of them are probably Big 12 quarterbacks. 4 or 5. But I think that's still true about this conference in terms of a physical running style. Arizona State, physical last year. They're not as physical without Scadaboo, but still a physical running style. And Cincinnati may be the Arizona State of last year in terms of their physicality running the football.
Who has the best ground game in the Big 12?
I'd argue it's Cincinnati. I don't know if that's statistically true, but you've got your Thunder and Lightning. You've got a quarterback who, when things break down, has the ability to scramble and make up plays with his legs. I think it is 100% Cincinnati.
And I agree. Statistically, they're 5th in the Big 12 in rushing offense.
Which is based on yards per play?
Yards per game. But yards per average rush, 6.6 yards per carry for Cincinnati as a team. That's almost a full yard better than anybody else in this league. They've had fewer attempts, but when you've got Tawee Walker, the Thunder, when you've got Evan Pryor, the home run hitter, the speedster, and then, to your point, you factor in Sorsby on top of that, and a really good offensive line that's only given up, 1 sack all year? That is dynamic in the backfield.
By the way, you too can join Bracket Cat by commenting on our streams on YouTube. Just search Big 12 Conference. Plenty of places to get us on Big 12 Studios. But if you want to engage with the show and we'll answer your questions or comments, like Bracket Cat, who's a K-Stater like you, James, check us out on YouTube. You can find us there and comment away, and maybe we'll bring them up on air, or at the very least, I'll at least respond.
You're very good at responding.
Thank you.
Love that name, Bracket Cat. I thought this was like a new promotion rollout that I was just out of the loop on when you said Bracket Cat. We'll get there. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Coming up next, we head into hour number 3. We will preview Texas Tech and Kansas before we go in the trenches with our guy, Lige Douzable, who played over a decade in the NFL, was one of the best ever at his position, defensive end for UCF. He joins us in about a half hour. This is Big 12 Today, heard exclusively on TuneIn, and you're watching us via Big 12 Studios.
Isaiah Hankins, snap, hold, kick.
Go!
The kick is good. Zeros on the clock. Baylor wins over
In Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. You can watch it through Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today, your daily access to the conference. We come to you each Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 Eastern Time, 7 to 10 Central. That is Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Taman Turner is on the controls to my left. We are working through some game previews before we talk to Lige Douzable. We go in the trenches with Lige each and every Thursday here on the program. It is a Three Things Thursday. It's a throwback Thursday. Texas Tech and Kansas. So this line has moved from 13.5 to 14.5 in favor of Texas Tech.
Started at 11.5.
Ooh, that's a big jump. That is a big jump between Texas Tech and Kansas. Texas Tech all time in the series, 23-2 against the Hawks. They've won 8 straight in Lubbock. KU's last victory there was in 2001. Kansas is 4-2. They're 2-1 in Big 12 play. Texas Tech looking to stay undefeated. Their highest ranked spot in the AP Top 25 since 2013. Truly having a historic year 6 weeks in to the college football season. What stands out about this matchup?
Well, the line, I mean, we're talking about a 4-2 team that Texas Tech is now more than a 2-touchdown favorite against. So I think that speaks to just how good, it says more about Texas Tech than it does about Kansas. And these are two of the most efficient offenses in college football. Kansas's offense is number 19 in the SP+. They're at 7.1 yards per play. And, I mean, Texas Tech, too. I mean, this is also a very robust offense that's top 5 in the SP+. The biggest game within the game here is the ability for Kansas's offensive line to protect, specifically David Bailey. David Bailey's been a game wrecker for Texas Tech so far this year. He leads all Power 4 defensive linemen with 31 pressures. Romello Height sits tied for 10th in the Power 4 with 20 pressures. So while Kansas's offensive line has improved, there's certainly some question marks, and this is going to be the best test they've faced, as it will be for most Big 12 teams. But, I mean, Jalen Daniels, like most quarterbacks, is much better when he's not blitzed or rushed. He's completing 77.5% of his passes for 11.5 yards per attempt with 13 touchdowns and 1 interception when he's kept clean. And he's completing just 39% of his passes for 5.2 yards per attempt when pressured this season. So he is a much different quarterback, much low percentage in terms of completion percentage, touchdowns. Everything is down if he's rushed. So I think that's the game here within the game. The ability for Kansas to protect, that gives them a shot to maybe win a shootout, but it starts right there.
And that is the path, I think, for Kansas is another shootout. We talked about if UCF is going to upset Cincinnati, it's probably in a shootout. And these Big 12 games, now that we're into league play, there's been an uptick in scoring offense. But Texas Tech's defense has been a completely different animal. They've allowed just 56 points all season long, the fewest through 5 games for a Texas Tech team since 1946. But on the other side for Kansas, it would be a shocking upset, yes, because of the spread. But KU's won games over top 10 opponents in back-to-back seasons. They beat number 6 Oklahoma in 23. They beat number 7 BYU last year. But Texas Tech, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. They're averaging 570 yards per game. Baron Morton has 12 touchdowns and is completing 69% of his passes and might not be the best quarterback on the roster. I look at Texas Tech and kind of their identity is air raid and defense. But I think they have a really underrated rushing attack with Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams. Cameron Dickey was top 5 this past weekend in GPS speed in all of college football. He hit like over 20 miles an hour. That was top 5 across the country on his breakaway run against Houston. So my point is, I think Texas Tech can beat you in so many different ways that's what separates them from some of those other top 10 wins that KU had the last couple of years.
Well, and what's really interesting to me, maybe the most interesting stat for me on Texas Tech this year is their red zone. They have 31 trips to the red zone, which is an insane number in 5 games. But they're only scoring touchdowns on, I think it's 17 of 31 trips into the red zone. Now, they've scored on 90% of the red zone trips, but to me, they're just not cashing in enough in the red zone. I don't know that hurts them in this game because Kansas has a really bad rush, or rather red zone defense. But when you're looking at this team, this Texas Tech team, and wondering if there's any flaws, they're not finishing enough drives with touchdowns. Now, 31 trips to the red zone in 5 games is insane. But they're not converting enough of those attempts, to, in my opinion, into touchdowns. That's something they need to be working on overall in terms of trying to reach their ceiling. But on third down, Texas Tech's offense is converting 53% on their defense is giving up only 25% of third downs. I mean, that's dominant. And Kansas's offense is only converting 31% of their third downs. So, I mean, that's a huge differential with Texas Tech's defense and Kansas's offense. I think for Kansas to have a shot here, the path for Kansas is limiting third downs. You've got to win on first and second down and avoid third down situations, especially third and long when you're toast. I mean, everything from a metric standpoint shows you that, like, if Kansas is in third and long, they're going to be in bad shape. Daniels not great when not kept clean. Texas Tech can really pin their ears back and rush the quarterback in third and long situations and become way more obvious, and Kansas is just not converting a high enough third down percentage. So for me, it's you got to win with big plays on first and second down. You can't be trying to stay even with the chains and get to manageable third downs. For me, it's about winning on first and second down.
See, I look at, and I think that's going to be key, certainly. In my mind, though, I see the path for Kansas to keep it close is, number one, they keep Texas Tech out of the end zone at a high rate. That red zone scoring offense for Texas Tech, I do think, is an area of concern for the Red Raiders if we were nitpicking them.
Yeah.
So if Kansas can force Texas Tech to settle for a couple of field goals, maybe early in the game, and then for me, on the Kansas side, I think it's explosives. Explosive plays offensively for KU. And we've seen that at times this season from Jalen Daniels, from Le'Shawn Williams. Emmanuel Henderson was one of my unsung heroes earlier this week. I think he is maybe the most underrated wide receiver or gadget guy that Kansas, in the entire conference. So if KU can force some field goals and then turn it around and get some explosives, maybe they can grab a lead in this game, and then it gets really interesting because that's the other thing. Texas Tech, I don't feel like they've had a ton of pressure applied to them this season. I know the Utah game was close for a bit, but it still felt like Texas Tech was still in control. They never surrendered a lead. And Baron Morton gets knocked out, Will Hammond comes in, and the rest is history. I'll be really interested to see what that looks like when that does happen at some point this season. And Kansas might be the team to do it because they do have speed that maybe is a little bit better at those positions than Texas Tech. I have a lot of interest in this game. Here's what Lance Leipold, the Kansas football coach, said just previewing this matchup.
Yeah, that they've used those resources really well.
Yeah.
There's things that have happened. You can see a very talented team that's deep across the board, impactful players of where they're going to go. It's going to be a huge challenge for us. But again, I know our players are up for that, much like we went to BYU and they were a top 10 football team a year ago. It's going to be the similar type of thing when you go into a top 10 sold-out stadium and a good atmosphere. But Joey McGuire has himself a really good football team, and we're going to need to be at our best on Saturday night, but I know our guys are ready for that challenge.
Watch out for those tortillas.
And then on the other side, from the Texas Tech angle, I think Texas Tech, they'll be up for this game. They're up for any game at Jones AT&T Stadium. Huge crowd. They're throwing tortillas. It's going to be wild. But Joey McGuire is really trying to emphasize to his team just how good Kansas is. Here's what he said about the Hawks.
Kansas, if you look at them, they should be 6-0. Easily could be 6-0. They were dominating Missouri at Missouri. They are a really good football team. This quarterback is the real deal. The receiver, I think, is leading the Big 12 in yardage. They've got two legit tight ends.
It's my favorite trope in college football. They should be 6-0. I don't know that I would classify their game against Missouri as at any point domination on either side. But I mean, that's part of Joey's job is to have a healthy fear of the opponent each and every week. But I mean, as we discussed last week, and pretty much every week, every team is a few plays away from being 6-0. But where they sit right now, Kansas is 4-2. I think Jalen Daniels is having a incredible year. And, we talked about that fumble he had on 4th and 1 and the, at the 1 yard line in the Cincinnati game. Wasn't on 4th down, excuse me. The fumble he had on a goal to go from the 1 yard line in the Cincinnati game. But aside from that, he's been pretty perfect. And they have not had a consistent run game to complement Jalen Daniels. So I just think we think about like Rocco Becht and Sam Levitt and Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover and Brendan Sorsby. Like, Daniels is rarely mentioned, and he's having as good of a year as any of those guys.
Why do you think that is? Why isn't he getting the notoriety? Because you're right, his numbers have been off the charts. And remember, last year, he had a ton of interceptions. This point in the season last year, he led the country in interceptions, a stat you don't want to lead. This year, it's been a total inverse. He's got, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks? Why do you think there isn't more buzz around him? Is it because Kansas is 4-2?
Yeah, I think it's because Kansas is 4-2. I think because this is his 6th year at Kansas, and so there's probably some fatigue just with him overall. Yeah, I think it's both of those things. Probably more to the point of they're 4-2. If they were 6-0, I think he'd be there'd be a lot more discussion around him.
How would you, as a Kansas alum, has he been better than you thought he'd be this year? Has he been what you expect him to be?
It's a great question, because I'd say in some ways he's probably been better. But it's the turnover that is just sits there, right? And it's unfair to him because he's had such a good year and there's so much on his plate in terms of like the offense and the success of the offense. But like when you look at their third down percentage and then you think about that turnover, it's like he has to be perfect. The margins are very slim for Kansas. Their defense has improved, so it's like there's a lot of issues that Kansas has had, which is why they're 4-2. At certain times there's issues that prop up. But it's not just Jalen Daniels. Just the one play, though, that stands out is that fumble. And it's like that game and that final, I think, harkened back to last year. So even though the results have been significantly better than what we saw from Kansas and Jalen Daniels last year, it was the one play in that Cincinnati game, the one blemish, in an otherwise incredible performance against a defense that has not given up that kind of yardage through the year to anybody else.
It's a great point.
I'm not giving him enough credit.
Right. That's a great point. The flaws in certain moments, that's what stands out. Not just with Daniels, I mean with any quarterback. Like Avery Johnson throws for a career high, but he had a pick six late in the fourth quarter, and that's what you remember from his performance. Texas Tech linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, he's listed as questionable. He's got 14 career takeaways after he had an interception at Houston. Texas Tech is 9-1 when he forces at least one takeaway in his career. So with him questionable, it could mean that linebacker Bryce Ramirez has to have a big game. And Bryce Ramirez, he said what we're all thinking about Texas Tech and their goals for this season.
We got to block out the outside noise. You know, that's something that I preach to all the guys. Like, yeah, it's cool to be ranked in the top 10. Like, yeah, it's cool. I'm not gonna say it's not, but at the end of the day, that's not our goal. Like, our goal is to win a national championship. Our goal last week was to beat Houston. That wasn't our goal for the season. Our goal for the season was to win a national championship. You know what I'm saying? So week to week, yes, we're taking steps to get to our goal, but that's not the end all be all for us. You know. So just reiterating that to the team to make sure that, yeah, it's cool that we're winning these games, but we're doing what we're supposed to do in order to get to where we ultimately want to go.
A national championship. That's the goal for Texas Tech.
You know, it's so intriguing because that should be their goal. It should be every team's goal. I think how we define success, though, for Texas Tech is interesting. It's an interesting discussion to me because the way they're playing right now, I would say there's like an expectation that this could be a team that's competing for a national championship. And maybe they will be. But I feel like getting to the playoff and winning a playoff game would be a great success for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And for the Big 12 Conference. Anything more than that would be, quite frankly, unbelievable.
Icing on the cake. The cake is to win a game. Let's win a game for the Big 12. All right, coming up next, we go in the trenches talking about the line of scrimmage in the Big 12 with Lige Douzable. He was on the call for the Baylor-Kansas State game over the weekend. He was the analyst on the ESPN Plus broadcast. Lige joins us around the corner. He's Ari. I'm James. This is Big 12 Radio exclusively on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios.
Low snap. Williams has it blocked. It was rejected.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Heard exclusively on TuneIn. If you missed any of our guest interviews throughout the show, you can always go back and pop a listen at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Right here, tune in on demand. We had the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark. He joined us in hour number 1. We had Max Olson from ESPN and ESPN.com in hour number 2. And we'll be joined by Lige Duzable here in just a moment for In the Trenches, where we look at the offensive and defensive lines in the Big 12 Conference. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling.
How you feeling, James? Feel good? How's it going?
10 out of 10.
Okay. You got to leave a little bit of room of growth, you know?
There's always room to grow.
8.5 out of 10.
I feel like we are doing a much better job of exploring the space. This is a lot different than our old setup, where you and I were basically shoulder to shoulder in a lot of ways. But you had more room to operate. You had like 3 computer monitors, and I just had this little guy. So now we're, even Steven there. We're all deadlocked in terms of computer space, which is very exciting for me personally.
That's what it's about?
That's what it's all about.
I'll be honest, I did not realize you were this discontent with my setup.
It's only the 7th time I've brought it up in the last week. I just built resentment for over a year.
You had every opportunity to get me to reduce my size component, my footprint. Never once did you bring it up. What else is bothering you about me that you don't bring up? Let's just,
Let's see, what else? Well, I feel like we hit 1 through 5 on the Ariisms. Ari told me, we did kind of we've been doing this show on radio for over a year, and we had a end-of-year wrap review session between just him and me, and talked about how we can do things a little bit differently. And Ari told me that I need to make fun of him more.
Yeah.
Which was very exciting.
Well, I mean, otherwise it sounds rude that I'm constantly making fun of you, and it's not reciprocated. It makes me sound thin-skinned. You are making me sound like I don't want you. Like you're the guy that everybody makes fun of, and nobody can make fun of me because I'm too thin-skinned.
I've got the thick skin, clearly.
Clearly.
We do have, I would say, Taman, kind of a little bit of a good cop, bad cop thing going on, where, Ari will bring the hammer down. We already noted that he's a little bit grumpy sometimes. And then I can kind of swoop. I'm in a pretty good spot. I can kind of swoop in, Ari, some days, just wakes up mad at the sun, but we really do need to get that done. So
James just takes it.
Ooh.
James
takes it?
Yeah. Ari will just go, we'll take some shots at you, and you just will take it and then just move on to the next
Take it, and I run with it.
Yeah. It's good for you, James.
This is why you've got to make fun of me more, James, so that Tammy doesn't think I'm just sitting here making fun of you.
Exactly. He just thinks you're really mean.
I think Ari's a nice guy.
He is. He's the best.
He's nice.
I should change that then.
I'll do the top 5 things that I like about you. Okay?
That'll be fun.
I had my Ariisms. Next week we'll do top 5 things that I love about.
I think you're missing. The whole thing here was that you're supposed to make fun of me more.
I think I've been doing that.
Okay, good. Not like, here's the top 5 things I love about Ari.
Yeah, I used to compliment Ari to lead every show.
Yeah.
I'd make a comment about his attire, just his energy. Really, I like to build him up, right before the show. I also
You're
like
a builder.
to build up. Yeah.
You're a builder.
Team
That's what
player.
you do. You build other people up.
I also like to build up Lige Duzable, who was on the call of the K-State Baylor game over the weekend on ESPN Plus down in Waco. He was the analyst and played defensive line for UCF, and he joins us here on Big 12 Today and Big 12 Studios. Lige, what's up? How was that game down in Waco? That was bananas.
Yeah, James and Ari, first and foremost, good morning. Doing well, can't complain. That game, hands down, was probably my favorite game I've called up until this point in my career. It literally had a little bit of everything, right? When you talk about being down by 14, Baylor in the fourth quarter, they're able to, rally around each other, come back, pick 6 by my guy Jacob Redding. Tori Petaway, our sideline reporter, got smoked on the sideline by Avery Johnson. She was a trooper, though. She's from Florida, so she's tough. She got up. Michael Triggs, one-handed catch. Sawyer Robertson just dropping dimes left and right. the game had everything, including a blocked field goal at the end. So, again, to this point in my career,
Recording in progress.
probably my favorite game that I've called. I would say it's tied, James, right? Because the game that we had, Tulsa UTSA, that game was dope for a different reason, right? Tulsa was down by, I believe, like 27 and came back and won that game. So it was up there with one of my favorite games I've called in my career.
What stood out to you about that game in the trenches? And I mean, K-State a couple of weeks ago looked really good running the football, not so much this past week. And Baylor defensively has not been great. So what stood out to you in the trenches in the K-State Baylor game from last week?
Yeah, there was an interesting stat. Shout out to my guy Pete Sousa. He came up with this stat before we were calling the game, and I believe in Jake Spavital's career as a coordinator at Baylor, they were 10-1 if they rushed for 150 yards or more.
Wow.
And I think the one loss, if I'm not mistaken, was off a Hail Mary play at the end versus Utah. That's how they ended up losing that game. So that was something I was interested to watch. Bryson Washington had some ailments, but he was tough. He continued to fight and battle through. They ran the ball well at times. Game script-wise, at the end of the game, they had to become more pass-happy because they were down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. But to me, that was the biggest thing the opposite way, right? Dylan Edwards was coming off a 160-yard game with UCF. And I thought Baylor did a really good job as far as understanding their assignments, understanding leverage. We sat and talked to Jacob Redding about that. So, understanding leverage and contain isn't just a D-line or trench thing. It's a linebacker safety thing as well, especially when you're dealing with a guy like Dylan Edwards and the speed he possesses on the edge. I thought they did a really good job not allowing him to get to the outside. Now, he did in the red zone one time. He was able to bounce a counter run and get to the outside. But I thought the defensive line did a really good job. Jackie Marshall, Matthew Fobbs-White, they did a really good job of understanding their assignments up front. And then also in the trenches, what really resonated with me now, Avery Johnson had some success running early in that game, but as the game progressed, right, understanding how to rush his one unit and corral and keep him in the pocket so he can't use his mobility. I thought, especially in that fourth quarter, they ratcheted that up and they rushed as one unit. So I think I was really impressed by Baylor doing that as well.
And Jacob Redding's a really interesting story. This is a guy who's had a monster year. It wasn't just a one-off, his pick-6 interception late in the game. But isn't he a former walk-on for Baylor? I know he's got a really interesting story.
It was so dope, right? Because I actually requested us to get an interview with him before the game, and it just must have been an omen that he was going to have the type of game that he had. You talked about it, James. We did a game with Baylor earlier this year versus Samford, and just talking to their defensive coordinator, Matt Pallage, you could tell he was giddy about Jacob Redding. This is a guy that's a Baylor Bear through and through. Matter of fact, his parents went to Baylor, right? So that's where he always wanted to go. We literally had pictures on the broadcast of him in Baylor's gear as like a 5-year-old. Like this kid wanted to be a Baylor Bear. And I sat down and asked him, and I was like, what was your why? Because you essentially, your first year and a half, had to pay to play the game you love. And that's rare in today's NIL era where guys could potentially go to like a Division II school, a Division I AA. He wanted to always go to Baylor, and he said he leaned on his faith, man. That's what got him through. And the funny thing is, when he first got to campus, maybe only 2 coaches knew who he was. The whole coaching staff didn't know who he was. It was a recruiting coordinator and Matt Pallage. And he set goals for himself every single year, right? His first year was, to maintain his red shirt, but to play in 4 games on special teams. He did that. The next year was to be a core special teams guy and maybe contribute a little on defense. Well, he did that and then ended up getting his first start in the bowl game at the end of the year. And going into this year, he wanted to be a main contributor on defense. And not only has he done that, he's become one of Baylor's better defensive players. I mean, that pick 6 literally swung the game in the favor of the Baylor Bears. He does a nice job. Dave Aranda starts to send some pressure off the edge on the boundary corner blitz. Avery Johnson, starts to backpedal, throws off his back foot. He undercuts a dig route and just takes it like 50 yards to the house, and you see the athletic ability in open space. So he's just a neat story. Again, a guy that literally started at the bottom as a walk-on and just clawed his way up to being one of Baylor's best defensive players. And the funny thing is they try to spare him on defense because he is like their best special teams player as well. So he's still a starter on all 4 special teams unit. But he showed up big and the brightest, not only on special teams, but obviously on defense as well in that major win over Kansas State this past week.
Lige, curious for your thoughts on Texas Tech in the trenches, especially from a defensive line perspective, because we almost have to recalibrate, like watching them and looking at their jerseys. Like it's bizarre for them to be this good in defense.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, me and Pete Sousa did a halftime report on the Texas Tech defensive line, and it was funny because our producer Jake Goss was like, "What do you think about this?" I was like, "Are you kidding me? We get to go in the trenches and talk D-line play? I'm all for that. I get to break D-line play down. Like, I never get to do this. Let's do it." So, and that's the thing that I've been saying about this Texas Tech team. Yes, everybody knows they're synonymous with being an explosive offense, right? Baron Morin on the outside, all the pass catchers, the running back. But that defensive line might be one of the best defensive. They are one of the best defensive lines in football. Just look at what they did a few weeks ago versus Utah and Devin Dampier and that offensive line, right? They have 2 offensive tackles that are probably going to go. One's going to go in the top 10, and the other one's probably going to go by round 3. And they made them look pedestrian 2 weeks ago. So it's just like people talk about how explosive that all. To me, the heart and soul of that team is that defensive line, like David Bailey, Romello Height, right? Lee Hunter. That is the heartbeat of that Texas Tech team and why they'll be true competitors, not only for the Big 12 crown, but the national championship because of what they have in the trenches on that defensive line.
Man, it sounds like you and Pete just had the most wonderful broadcast of all time between Baylor and Kansas State. I'm so glad and happy for you guys. That sounds really cool.
Don't hate James, man. We're going to have fun this weekend.
I don't know how you can call Pete your guy when I thought I was your guy. Okay?
You are my guy.
All right? We do one game apart, and now Pete's your guy. I do love Pete.
He just had a great stat that he brought up. That's it. Dang, you love Pete too.
Man, that's so great that you guys did so many cool things during that broadcast, and I couldn't be happier. It sounds really cool. Lige, who has the best rushing attack?
Lige, who has the best dress, me or Pete?
Who has the best rushing attack, and who's your favorite play-by-play announcer that works for ESPN also that you've done games with?
James Westling, without a doubt, is my favorite play-by-play.
Thank you. Just fishing for some compliments
that I work with. Best rushing attack. That's a very interesting question, right? Because could go Texas Tech, even though they're synonymous with passing the ball. They run the ball extremely well as well. Arizona State on the low has had a really good rushing attack this year as well. And then obviously, when you look at Baylor and Bryson Washington, I love what they've done. Decisions. I'm going to actually, and this is not me being biased, I'm going to lean towards Baylor, right? And again, Sawyer Robertson gets all, the highlights and his name in the paper, and rightfully so. He has been one of the better, quarterbacks in the nation. But what they've been able to do with Bryson Washington and now some of those younger backs that they have, and Caden Knighton and Michael Turner, they've actually run the ball really well at Baylor this year when they've actually needed to run the ball. Even in that game last week when they were down 14, even in the fourth quarter when they needed to get some runs together, Bryson Washington was able to string some things along. So when I look at the totality of the Big 12, I would lean to the consistency of Baylor running the ball week in and week out. But I would also say Arizona State is a close second. And it's weird, right, because we're not mentioning Utah. I just think, again, Devin Dampier is so pivotal. He's their leading rusher, obviously their leading passer. He's so pivotal in the run game, but it's, quarterback scrambles, quarterback called runs. When you're talking about traditional run game, I would have to lean towards, I would say, Baylor, and then right behind that, I would say Arizona State.
Love it. Awesome stuff. Lige Douzable. We go in the trenches with Lige each and every Thursday here on Big 12 Today. Heard exclusively on TuneIn and now on video via Big 12 Studios. Thanks, Lige. We'll catch up soon.
Appreciate you guys.
Lige Douzable played at UCF, played over a decade in the NFL. He is our line of scrimmage savant here on your home for the Big 12. We'll wrap up the program next. He's Ari, I'm James. This is Big 12 Radio. This is also Big 12 Studios. This is the Big 12. This is a different league.
They're going for it here. 4th down and 1. Pop pass over the top. Easton Dean. See ya.
On a Three Things Thursday, it's a throwback Thursday. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. You're listening to us exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us exclusively on Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast Channel. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Taman Turner is producing and engineering our show, and the internet is buzzing about Ari's ankles.
They're great ankles.
Phenomenal ankles.
Thank you. I've been complimented throughout my life on my ankles. So
A lot of ankle talk today on the internet. Also, I have, as we wrap up the program, this is day one of Big 12 Today on Big 12 Studios. We're with you each Monday through Friday now, 7A to 10A Central Time, as we have been on radio only for the past year plus. But I have entered a space in which I'm doing something that it just feels like something that my dad would do.
Okay.
And that is I'm trying to send a text to one individual or two individuals. And for the second time in the last week or two, I have sent a text to the wrong group text. So I wanted to text you to ask how Taman was doing when I was filling in one day.
Yes.
When he was filling in for me, I should say. Sorry, Taman, that you were included on that thread where I asked how Taman was doing. I wanted to know. I wanted an update.
Yeah, it was kind of awkward.
It was. And then really awkward the next time I saw Taman. I was just hoping he kind of forgot about it.
I laughed. I thought it was funny.
How's he doing? Scale 1 out of 10.
Does he?
Taman?
You're like, does he sound as bad as he did last time? It's like, whoa, I don't know.
It's not true, Taman.
What he's
First
talking
time
about?
hearing this.
You would know. You would
What?
know if that text was sent because you were on the thread. You weren't supposed to be.
Ari, I said nice things about you. What?
I was what James said. I don't know why he would have sent it to you too. You got to be really careful, by the way, with texts for that exact reason.
Well, yeah, when you talk behind people's backs.
Yeah, right. So I guess the first lesson
Which
there is don't talk behind people's backs. But in a realistic
should lead
world,
with that.
we're in a realistic world where everybody does that. You got to be careful. The other thing is, as we know, our phones are listening to us. So, like, I've heard of situations in which somebody's name came up. The phone was like, "Oh yeah, let me go ahead and I've identified you're talking about this person. Let me go ahead and call them from a pocket dial," and then that person can then hear what the other people are talking about.
What you're saying about them?
What? Yeah. Now this didn't happen to me.
I was gonna say, man, this, I'm very concerned about how much you're talking about people behind their back now.
Yeah, no, it's not
By
me.
people, I mean just me.
I'm not a big talk behind your back kind of person. I'm more of a passive aggressively show it to your face.
Love that.
You know, as you know.
The weirdest thing about your phone listening to you is when you're talking and then you go on social media and then you see an ad about something that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
It's super weird, super creepy.
Oh yeah, it happens with our televisions too. Well, the other day I sent a text to Ari, Taman, and Taylor McCarg. He joined the conversation on kind of a one-off. He's with us each Monday as our Monday morning quarterback about Baylor's message boards. We love message board geniuses here at Big 12 Today. And this Baylor fan says, hey guys, season hasn't gone how we thought it would go. Baylor should just hire both Bob and Mark Stoops. Bob Stoops could be interesting, especially if Mark Stoops gets canned at Kentucky. Maybe we get them both with Mark as defensive coordinator. Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Message board geniuses, one of the best Twitter accounts out there, scouring the internet to find the dumbest, and I mean dumbest, posts on message boards. And there's some good ones, but this one takes the cake. Let's just say that Dave Aranda is not back with Baylor as their head coach next year. Yeah, I don't think Mark Stoops or Bob Stoops is a call. I'm just going to go on a limb and say that. Number one, I think Bob Stoops has made it fairly obvious that he doesn't want to coach for anybody not named Oklahoma. Number two, no.
But isn't he coaching in the XFL or whatever that new league is?
Sure, yeah. Whatever the new league is. Yep. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's the one.
I think he coaches the Vegas team, right?
He coaches the Arlington team.
Arlington team.
If he still does, the Arlington Renegades. How are you not as big of a fan of the Arlington Renegades?
I've been to so many games.
Do you even lift, bro?
I can't stop watching.
They're one of the only football teams in Dallas that actually wins nowadays.
Pretty sure Max Duggan is the quarterback.
Yeah.
Former TCU QB.
Yeah.
I mean, you would know.
Right, I'm number one fan. The number one thing I'll say about the Renegades is they need to knock down the old ballpark so they can build more parking around the new ballpark. that old ballpark should not exist. It should be knocked down and made into parking.
Wait, there's 2 ballparks?
That hurts, Ari.
For the
as a
Renegades?
Dallas native.
Yeah. So there's the new ballpark, and then the old ballpark is still there.
Feels like a lot.
And they're missing a huge opportunity for legitimate parking, which has been my complaint about going out to that new stadium a lot.
Yeah, that's why I haven't been. It's a Throwback Thursday here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. There's some phenomenal Big 12 matchups this weekend across the college football landscape, and matchups that have maybe more history than you would think. BYU and Arizona, and you touched on this yesterday, feels like a bit of a rivalry game in that they've played each other a ton. Now, this is their first matchup as members of the Big 12, but this is a series that has a lot of history. And let's go back to 2018. Arizona and BYU played in the opener that season. It was the debut of Kevin Sumlin.
Wow.
In Tucson. There's a name. 28-23, BYU won the game. Arizona's offense was spearheaded by Khalil Tate, the quarterback for Arizona. BYU actually led by a ton. Arizona came storming back. They scored 13 unanswered but came up short. BYU piled up almost 400 yards of offense, and Kevin Sumlin fell to 0-1.
Yeah, we've talked a lot this season about how many of these Big 12 matchups are like for the first time ever since 1953, or historically there's been a lot of Big 12 matchups to start this year that have just not been historical matchups. This week, though, is different. BYU, Arizona, those are teams that have played against each other a lot. Arizona State and Utah, obviously, going back to their Pac-12 days. And then UCF Cincinnati as well. So, I mean, there's some new ones in there as well that sort of like in similar weeks, in previous weeks, where it's like, oh, yeah, these two teams haven't played in 70 years. There are a lot of games this week that are more repeat games, common opponents, games that have been played a lot.
Yeah, when you think of UCF and Cincinnati, does that feel like a rivalry game to you? I mean, proximity-wise, no. But they both entered the Big 12 at the same time. They both entered the Big 12 from the American, and they've played every year since 2015. This will be their 11th matchup. The head-to-head is dead even at 5-5. They've both had really, really good seasons in the last decade since the series began. Is that a rivalry game?
That's a good question. I would think so to a degree. I mean, these are two teams that sort of were, flag bearers for the American Athletic Conference. UCF was the first Group of 5 team to break through and get to a college football playoff under Luke Fickell. UCF under Scott Frost had an undefeated season and an acclaimed national championship, as egregious as that might be. So, these are two programs that lifted themselves up by their bootstraps, delivered themselves to the Big 12 because of it, and are now, sort of trying to figure things out in a new conference. UCF has not had a level of success that they enjoyed while as a member of the American Athletic Conference, and Cincinnati has been in the same boat until this season. And this was a make-or-break year for Scott Satterfield, and so far it's been made. But, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, like, there's no better example of the difficulty of moving up in conference from, Group of 5, Group of 6 to the Power 4 than Cincinnati and UCF.
And this series, the games have all been decided by one score or less every year since 2019. And 2019 was really the emergence of Sauce Gardner. It was nationally televised. He was just a freshman for Cincinnati back then. Ahmad Sauce Gardner made a name for himself with a play that was a go-ahead pick six. It really, fans say, swung the balance of power in this rivalry back with Cincinnati. He's obviously now a star in the NFL with the Jets. But the UCF quarterback in that game was none other than Dylan Gabriel, who went on to transfer to Oklahoma and then Oregon, and now he's playing in the NFL. UCF had 4 turnovers that 2019 matchup. They also ended a 31-game streak of at least 30 points scored. That was the longest such scoring run in all of FBS since 19 36. So it was a historic night back in 2019, more so for Cincinnati, who got the win.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look up and down both of those rosters, you're going to see a lot of players that are playing on Sunday now, and that just goes to show you the type of talent that both those teams have and are trying to get back to now in the Big 12.
All right, last one, Kansas and Texas Tech playing this weekend. Texas Tech is 23-2 in the series. Let's go back to 2008. Kansas
23-2. Yikes.
That surprised me. I mean, I
shouldn't and shouldn't.
I guess I thought maybe they'd played more before KU's 2 decades of the struggle bus. 23-2.
Yeah.
Texas Tech won this game 63-21. Graham Harrell torched Kansas. Had 386 yards. He had 5 touchdowns. Hooked up with Michael Crabtree multiple times, including in the first quarter that really jump-started the game for Texas Tech. But that was still a good KU team. Todd Reesing was the quarterback for that Kansas team. He struggled in this game. He threw 3 interceptions. If I remember, that was kind of the beginning of KU's slide, if you will.
Yeah.
That season.
I was at that game, and I'll just never forget the Crabtree hand motions that Texas Tech fans had. They would do the crab tree.
Yeah.
So I was super annoyed about that throughout the game because it was just relentless. At first, I was like, what are they doing with their hands? Oh, yeah, crab tree. But, yeah, I think you're right. Like, that was sort of the beginning of the end of that KU run. And, yeah, I mean, that was a moment in time where, from a KU perspective, I mean, I remember the tailgate. It was like, let's show the rest of the country that we belong here as one of the upper echelon teams of the Big 12. And that offense was just unstoppable. And Kansas could not match that defense, or could not match that on their offensive side.
Was that would have been the year after KU's Orange Bowl season, correct?
Yep.
KU had that special year in 07, played in the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day in 08, and in the 08 season kind of, struggled in terms of their preseason expectations. And that was that special year for Texas Tech where they went on to win 11 games. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Coming up tomorrow, you'll hear from BYU head coach Kalani Sitake. Also, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark.
It's also Sitake's 50th birthday tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
The Big 5-0?
That's right.
Man, he's done a phenomenal job with that team. Like, I think they're better this year than they were this time last year.
I think that's fair. I think they have much more upside at the quarterback position. They had a more experienced quarterback last year. But I think in terms of, like, longevity, yeah, I mean, there's a lot higher of a ceiling of this team based on the quarterback position. But we're about to find out. This is a, F around and find out kind of moment for Bear Bachmeier because – and I think Gordon Monson from the Salt Lake Tribune put it perfectly. Like, that, these have been Cat 2 hurricanes here. This is about to be Cat 5, Cat 6 that he's about to jump into.
The crowd's going to be insane down in Tucson. We'll also be joined by Shaylee Myers, Kansas State Volleyball. That'll be on tomorrow's program. We will wrap up the work week with our weekly Pick'em segment as well. We are crushing it. Humble brag. We're pretty good. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling for Taman Turner on the controls. You've been listening to us via TuneIn. Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio joins you again tomorrow, 8 to 11 a Eastern Time. Also, you can watch us via Big 12 Studios. We'll talk to you then.
Fafita roll.
All right.
Good job, guys.
One show in the books.